Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto acquires Doujutsu by performing the ritual of the Forbidden Bloodline. After reading the Forbidden Scroll Part 1 before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Naruto leapt atop buildings as he tried his hardest to get away from the Hokage tower, grinning widely as he recalled how much blood gushed out of his Hokage Jason's nose when he asked what he was doing there in the middle of the night. Haha. I can't believe I just beat the Hokage with my sexy no jutsu. He thought as he moved away from the village proper into the forested training grounds that almost took up half of the village's area. Mizuki Sensei said that if I learn just one skill from this scroll, I can graduate and finally be a genin. His musings broke as he felt the large scroll bump him slightly as he landed on one of the training areas. Let's see, Mizuki Sensei said he'd meet me on the furthest training ground out here, but if I want to study all the techniques on this scroll, I don't want to be found out soon. Okay, time for plan B, he said as he ran into a denser forest ground where his favorite spot in Konoha was. He found that everything in his makeshift treehouse was untouched. Good, the animals haven't touched this place yet, he said as he pulled out a regular sized but thicker scroll, an inkwell, an ink block and a small sized brush from a box. Wetting the ink block, he dabbed the brush, which readily absorbed the ink. Okay, now to copy the techniques in here. Iruka sensei doesn't realize it, but my calligraphy's better than all of my classmates combined. Taking the tabs off the forbidden scroll, he started to copy the information stored in the overly large paper. I guess they made this scroll as large as it can be, because the techniques in here are important and easier to read. Heh, no one can read my calligraphy other than myself, so the info I write here on my scroll is safe. He broke his thoughts as he continued to copy the techniques and the theory behind the techniques. As he wrote, Naruto's eyes widened. Damn, he tricked me. This scroll's techniques and theories are forbidden. When I catch that bastard, I guess I better bring this back to Jason as soon as I'm finished. Naruto sighed to himself as his hands still worked at writing the techniques. Forbidden or not, this scroll has some interesting techniques, besides it would be handy if the village had a copy. He reasoned as he wrote in fast but deliberate strokes. The script wouldn't make sense to anyone who would read it, except to the one who wrote the scroll. For 2 hours he wrote. After writing the Shiki Fuijin, he read what he thought the last technique, but all he saw was a note and a small seal. Reading the note, he was surprised that all 4 Hokages have signed it letter style. To the one reading this scroll that is not a Hokage, we, the Hokages of Konoha, have been keeping the last note of this scroll updated as time wore on. If you are reading this, then we fear that dark times are ahead for our village. Old and new enemies will show themselves to endanger Konoha and the other shinobi countries' peace. We 4 have sealed in this note a scroll with instructions to awaken a forbidden bloodline. This bloodline will only be unsealed in time of great peril. But if someone other than a Hokage is reading this, then we fear the time has indeed come. To the savior of Konoha, please protect the scroll contained within this seal, because if it falls in the wrong hands, then all is lost. However, if you are not the savior of Konoha, then you will notice that your body has frozen with no chance to move at all. We now implore the one reading this scroll to move his arm and cover the center of the seal in blood. If you don't do this in 3 seconds, you will be incinerated by a cage-level Kaiten technique that will turn your body to ashes instantly. Signed, Shadame Hokage, Nidame Hokage, Sandame Hokage and Yondame Hokage of Konohagakure no Sado. At this, Naruto's eyes widened. Moving his arm, he bit his thumb and covered the seal in his blood, closing his eyes as he waited for the searing heat of flames to cover his body. When nothing happened for a minute, he opened them again. In front of him were the ethereal forms of the 4 Hokages. He recognized them from the books. He then realized Sandame's form was somehow more solid than the others and somehow more youthful looking than the one he looked up to growing up. Of course, he updated the scroll in his prime, and he's still alive, he thought to himself as Shadame spoke. What is your name, young leaf of Konoha? At this, Naruto kneeled on one knee and bowed. Uzumaki Naruto, Shadame-sama. 11 years old, academy student. Shadame then nodded as Nidame stepped forward. How did you come in contact with the forbidden scroll, Naruto? Naruto, still bowing, narrated how Mizuki tricked him into stealing the scroll and how he copied it in his own script, which rendered it unreadable except for himself. Nidame kept a neutral expression and stepped back. Sandame had a frown as he studied his near-solid form. So Naruto-kun, I take it I'm still alive, aren't I? How did you steal the scroll from my office when I sometimes sleep on the bedroom just to the side of it? Naruto couldn't help but grin, thanking Kami. He was still bowing low as he told him how he defeated the Sandame's old self with a sexy no jutsu. Sandame had a pink tinge to his youthful features in embarrassment. Yondame chuckled, his cheeks pink as well. Shadame and Nidame looked at Sandame as though he had sprouted a second head. Told you Sarah would turn out as a pervert when he grew older, Nikki. Nidame said while grinning as Shadame smirked. Sandame scowled back at them. Lucky for you two, you died in the middle of the shinobi wars, or you'd have turned worse perverts than I do. This time the brother Hokages scowled at the third. Yondaime broke the scowling match by speaking. "No time for that you three, now Naruto, if Sarutobi sensei is still alive and I'm not, then how did I die?" Naruto then related the events of Kyuubi's attack almost 11 years ago. As he told what he knew in the history books, the Hokages' faces turned grim. After some minutes of whispering and murmuring among the Hokages, Yondaime spoke. "Alright Naruto, stand up and show us your stomach." Naruto complied and opened up his orange jacket, shrugging out of it to remove it completely and lifted up his undershirt. Yondaime looked at him intensely now, "Mold some chakra." Naruto complied again and looked at his stomach, his eyes widened as a seal, or series of seals appeared on his stomach. Yondaime's dark blue eyes saddened as I suspected. "Shadaime, Nidaime, Sandaime, the seals on him are of my own work, I'd recognize that script style anywhere." Naruto looked up at the Hokages with confusion. "What work? What did you do to me? What you did to me killed you, didn't it?" Yondaime nodded as he approached Naruto slowly, placing an ethereal hand on his shoulder. "Sit down, you may not like what I'm going to tell you." Naruto nodded and sat down on a bench, the other Hokages sat down as well. Yondaime sighed as he began speaking. "Naruto is the newborn child I used to seal Kyuubi." At this Naruto felt tears running down his whiskered cheeks. "Kyuubi? You sealed Kyuubi in me? So that's why all those hateful stares and the cold looks, especially when they say demon." Yondaime nodded in silence. "Now, what I'm going to explain will shock all of you, but I'll try." Fortunately, when the real Yondaime wrote Fuin Jutsu Shiki Fuijin, he updated the Forbidden Scroll before he fought the Kyuubi. At that time though, he knew he was going to die. "I'm just absorbing the new info. The demon's chakra is totally different in form and purpose from our chakra. It's infinitely more powerful than our own chakra, as a demon's chakra doesn't depend on its body for the resource. A demon's chakra is entirely dependent on its soul. I've found out from pouring into ancient history scrolls and text that the Kyuubi's body had been destroyed on several occasions, but its soul always comes back to reclaim its body, making it more resilient to damage. Of course the Kyuubi's body also helps it to produce chakra, but it doesn't depend entirely on its body. I don't know why Kyuubi attacked Konoha, but I would have thought a few ways on how to defeat it. But in the end I could not, so my last resort was a modified version of the Fuin Jutsu Shiki Fuijin, which ended my life. I knew that the Kyuubi couldn't be sealed in me or another grown person because it was too powerful for even the Shinigami death god who I summoned to help me with the sealing. I found out I needed a child, a newborn child, who just barely minutes before entered this world. I needed a newborn because its chakra coils have not formed yet, enabling it to adjust to the demon's chakra system as it grew up, and if the child dies, Kyuubi will be taken to the afterlife with him. Then I added another seal, so that Kyuubi's chakra would be siphoned out of its soul and absorbed by the child as he grew up, adding to his own stamina and chakra reserves. I also added another seal so that if the child attempted to call on the Kyuubi's chakra or the Kyuubi attempted to overload the child with his chakra, he won't be overwhelmed with the Kyuubi's natural instincts, and that child was Naruto. Yondaime sighed loudly. "This is what I know at this point. I may have added extra seals as I went along, and I guess your living self knew what they were, Sarutobi sensei." Yondaime finished as he looked at Sandaime, who nodded in assent. "Well then, I guess this confirms Naruto-kun's identity as the savior of Konoha." Naruto looked confused as his eyes darkened. Shadaime answered Naruto's unspoken question. "Before Konohagakure was formed, we shinobi lived a nomadic lifestyle. Moving from place to place while avoiding other shinobi groups and/or clans dictated our way of life. I, as the leader of my own group, decided to settle down to one place where we could build a home for ourselves. Before I built Konoha, we had a clairvoyant shinobi in the group whose descendants formed the clan with the surname of Yamanaka years after. He said that after 4 generations of Hokage rule our village would be besieged by an evil, which will weaken it. The rise of the savior of the known world will come after defeat of that evil, which will give the savior its first burden. The savior must be capable of carrying multiple burdens, as his path will not be an easy one. The road to his victory against the coming evils will be long and hard. Thus the past and present leaders of Konoha shall ease his burden when he reveals himself." At this Naruto absorbed the information and slowly nodded. The 4 Hokages nodded in agreement and bowed in front of Naruto. Speaking in sync. "Uzumaki Naruto, Academy student and the vessel of the 9-tailed demon fox, you have been given a burden to save Konoha and the known world, as well as keeping Kyuubi at bay. Will you accept this responsibility?" But the questions Naruto bowed low as well, his voice solemn. "Shadaime-sama, Nidaime-sama, Sandaime-sama, Yondaime-sama. My dream in life is to become the strongest Hokage of all. If this helps me to get stronger, then I accept the responsibility. I will not give up. Nor will I take back my words, as this is my Nindo." Hearing his words, the Hokages smiled and stood up, and in front of them a medium-sized scroll materialized. Yondaime approached the scroll and grasped it. "You may now stand up, Naruto." Naruto stood up and flashed his foxy grin, which the Yondaime returned with equal strength. Inside this scroll is the ritual on how to unlock the forbidden bloodline of Konoha. Naruto looked at Yondaime with a confused face. Don't be confused, a bloodline limit is different from a bloodline. You'll also find the differences of a regular bloodline from the forbidden bloodline on the scroll. At this, Naruto's confusion somewhat lessened. The Hokages then began sealing and approached Naruto, Shadaime and Nidaime on the left, Sandaime and Yondaime on the right. They then pressed 2 fingers each on his upper arms. Naruto then felt a burning and carving sensation on his arms as he fought back the pain. The Hokages finished and stepped back. Naruto's arms now had the kanji for Sho and Nai on his left arm, while he had the San and Yon kanji on his right. A few minutes after this, Sandaime spoke. "Okay Naruto-kun, the kanji now tattooed on your arms contains a scroll with our personal techniques inside. All you have to do is spread your blood horizontally against any tattoo and perform the summoning technique." Sandaime then showed Naruto the seals for Kuchiyas no Jutsu a few times. Naruto nodded after memorizing the seals. "The tattoos also summons our imprints from the forbidden scroll. If you want to talk to one of us, just place 2 fingers on any kanji and we'll answer. You can also perform a Kuchiyas to summon us, just spread the blood vertically on the kanji instead of horizontally." Sandaime then held up his hand and a letter somehow materialized on it. "This is a letter addressed to the current Hokage of Konoha, signed by the 4 of us and the current Hokage him herself. This letter will bypass the council's powers to give you the highest level access to the Jutsu scrolls on the Konoha library and most of the scrolls on the Hokage's office. My technique scroll has cage level fire and earth techniques which I think you'll find useful. I also have some theories on there on how to combine jutsus into successive attacks." Naruto's eyes then widened and grinned. "Sweet. I've never entered the library before." After hearing this, Sandaime nodded soberly and stepped back. Shadaime then approached Naruto and began sealing again, pressing his hand on Naruto's forehead. Naruto felt something like a plant growing on his head, but the sensation faded just as quickly. The kanji from Mokuton appeared in black on Naruto's forehead before fading away completely. "You have now inherited the techniques for the wood element, Naruto. Now if I'm correct, the scrolls for this element have either been lost or damaged irreparably. You are the only one in Konoha who can now replicate my techniques. My scroll has all the jutsus for wood element, use them wisely." The blonde fox nodded at Shadaime seriously. Shadaime stepped back as Nidaime stepped forward and began sealing just like his brother, this time pressing his hand over Naruto's chest where his heart was supposed to be. Naruto then felt a sensation like ice cold water washing over his heart. Nidaime then smiled. "Back when I was still Hokage, I perfected a way to gather water molecules in the surrounding air and turn them into huge amounts of water. I favored water techniques like Aniki favored wood techniques, and now you have the same ability as I did. I also had a sword which became as legendary as much as I did. It was named as the Raijin no Ken, a lightning elemental sword. I also have some Kenjutsu techniques listed on my scroll for the Raijin no Ken, and since I have no more living descendants, the sword is yours if you can manage to acquire it. As I have no clue where it is at the moment." Nidaime then stepped back as Yondaime approached Naruto, his face had a nostalgic smile on it. "You look so much like her." "Who?" Naruto asked as Yondaime shook his head. "Sorry, I was thinking of someone else." As Yondaime repeated Sandaime's actions and held up a scroll. "With this scroll, I am recognizing you as the legal heir to my techniques and assets." Naruto's eyes then widened and bugged out. "What?" he shouted. The Hokages winced at his volume. Yondaime then smiled a foxy grin, which faded quickly. "It was my fault that you were orphaned, and it was also my fault that you now hold a burden that even a cage like us would shy away from. The fact that I recognize you as my heir is my way of asking your forgiveness. You should have led a normal life if it wasn't for the Kyuubi shadow looming over you and the hate of almost all the villagers. The scroll also has a note telling my sensei Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin, to teach you all of my techniques. It also has a map telling you where the clan houses of the Uzumakas and Kazamas are and how to find them." Naruto's eyes widened once more. "Uzumakas. Kazamas. I have a clan. I belong to 2 of them." Yondaime chuckled and nodded. "Yes Naruto, you are both a Kazama and an Uzumaki. But keep this a secret, okay? Uzumakas and Kazamas have powerful enemies, both here and abroad. Sadly, you are the last link to both clans." Naruto then became sad and nodded solemnly. Yondaime spoke again. "I also have a map there on where to find the training gear I used during the time when I was a Chunin until I became Hokage. You'll also find instructions there on how to forge my special Thunder God kunai and other useful weapons. As well as a scroll on how to make seals and their theories." Naruto nodded as all the Hokages shimmered and distorted slightly. "Our time is fading," Shadaime said. "Remember what we told you?" Nidaime joined in. "You have the potential to become the greatest Hokage of all, we all agree on it." Sandaime smiled as he held his chin. "We, the Hokages of Konoha, acknowledge you and your potential Naruto, become Hokage and make us proud, we will always be watching over you in this village." Yondaime spoke with a foxy grin as the four Hokages nodded. The Hokages were then bathed in a natural light as their forms faded. The light seemed to seep slowly back into the scroll of seals. In a few seconds darkness returned to the treehouse. Naruto had a smile, a true smile that reached his eyes as tears fell from his cheeks onto the wood floor. They acknowledge me, the Hokages of Konoha who I looked up to while I grew up with hate, and they acknowledge my potential to be Hokage. He smiled as he wiped his tears with his arm, he then looked at his tattoos. Well, with the Hokages of Konoha acknowledging my strength, I can do this. I will become Hokage. It's not just a pipe dream anymore. He then looked at his clothes as he absorbed all they told him in his head. They never said if I was to keep this a secret from Hokage Jason, I guess I'll just tell him everything that happened and then I'll ask for advice. And since I don't have any reason to be loud anymore, I think it's time to change my outfit. Orange was fine as an attention grabber. But I think I'll be a moving target if I continue to wear this on missions now then, let's finish the scroll and learn the first technique. He said out loud as he returned to work copying the Hokage's last note and the seal, as well as learning the first technique on the scroll, which was Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Closing the forbidden scroll of seals after learning the technique, he sneaked back to the Hokage's office and left the scroll on his desk, along with a note that he will talk to him tomorrow. For the meantime, it was time to confront Mizuki. After an episode of chazzing, angsting, and taunting, Naruto beat Mizuki black and blue with Kage Bunshin. I think I overdid it not. Iruka gave Naruto his own hit IA to him as a sign of his graduation and then promptly lectured him about the seriousness of finally becoming a ninja of the leaf. Instead of tuning out his sensei, he absorbed the entire lecture and nodded at specific points. After a couple of hours, Iruka finally finished. Well then Naruto, as a gift for your graduation, you can ask me anything you want. For the first time since he knew the blonde fox, Naruto's face pondered his answer for 5 minutes and then spoke up. Well, for starters I'm going to need some new clothes. Looking down his attire he shook his head. If I'm going to do out-of-town missions, I don't want to be a moving target. I also need some scrolls on ninjutsu, taijutsu, and jinjutsu, just basic genin stuff, and oh yeah, a few scrolls with chakra control exercises on them, from genin to jounin, and some basic elemental jutsu scrolls, some practical jutsus for everyday use, and regular offensive jutsus. Naruto then noticed the silence from his teacher. Turning his head to Iruka he saw that the Chunin's eyes were narrowed. Okay, you, who are you and what did you do with the real Naruto? Naruto then sweatdropped then shouted with a controlled volume. It's still me, Iruka sensei. Iruka winced somewhat at the loud volume of his student and then laughed nervously. Sorry Naruto, it's just that you were acting so normal. Mature. Serious. Naruto interrupted expectantly. I wanted to say weird. At this comment Naruto frowned/pouted. Iruka chuckled and commented on how juvenile his look was. A second later Iruka stopped his taunting and stood up, sensing several chakra signatures. Naruto somehow detected them and stayed on alert behind his sensei. A squad of Anbu appeared over Mizuki's unconscious form. One of the Anbu stepped forward and spoke up. We were informed by Hokage-sama that the scroll of seals was returned to his office some time ago and stated that it was the Chunin sensei Mizuki was the one who tricked Uzumaki Naruto into stealing the scroll of seals for him. Iruka and Naruto nodded. Yes, that's about right sir. Naruto said as the Anbu turned his masked face on him, while the other squad members bound Mizuki in preparation of sending him to Anbu prison, where Ibiki was waiting for Mizuki to be interviewed. However, the Hokage wishes to speak to the two of you, together. Report to the Hokage Tower at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Iruka and Naruto nodded as the Anbu disappeared, taking Mizuki with them. Naruto then turned to his sensei. Nah, Iruka sensei, can I walk you to the hospital? You really need those wounds of yours to be healed. Iruka then grinned as he shook his head. Putting a hand on Naruto's shoulders, he gave it a reassuring squeeze. Don't worry Naruto, the medic nins will patch me up so that I'll be able to return to the academy tomorrow. Right now, you need to go home now and sleep because the team rosters will be announced tomorrow. Naruto nodded at his sensei's suggestion and said farewell, his goggles still on his hands. Iruka watched the boy, now an adult. Leave. Naruto, you never cease to surprise me, he smiled as he shuffled towards Konoha General Hospital. Wincing at the giant shuriken wound on his back, so he said he wanted some new clothes and some scrolls. Well, my most excellent student of all won't be shortchanged in terms of that department. He chuckled as he thought of what clothes would be fashionable, but at the same time functional enough so that Naruto can fight in them without it being damaged so easily. His thoughts about Naruto occupied him all the way to the hospital. Meanwhile Sandaime was currently looking at the scroll's last note, which now has a footnote that says, "The savior of Konoha has been found, tested, and acknowledged. It is now up to the current Hokage to ensure that his growth will not be stunted nor hindered. This is for the safety and future of Konoha. We four have given you, the current Hokage of Konoha, the power to make sure that the savior will not encounter problems during his training." His trials are just beginning, and the fate of the known shinobi world rests on his shoulders. Along with his other burdens, this will not be easy for you or for him. Under said footnote were the kanji of Sho, Nai, San, and Yan, along with a date and time when the note in the scroll was read. After reading the note, Sarutobi sighed in defeat. The third Hokage resolving to sleep on it and to talk to both Naruto and Iruka tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a long day for all three of them. Next day, Sarutobi currently looked at the roster of graduating genins. With Naruto's rather early graduation, there were now 28 fresh graduates for the Jounins to handle. This morning, he held an emergency meeting with the council to discuss the matter of Naruto stealing the Forbidden Scroll of Seals. With the Anbu and Iruka's supporting report, Naruto was found innocent of the charges. Not that it mattered to some of the council's members who were out for the blonde fox's blood. He stayed quiet as he waited for today's meeting with the Jounins, discussing this year's potential genin. Naruto's alarm clock blared at exactly 6:30 am. He then blearily sat up from his bed and pressed the snooze button. Yawning loudly, he woke up as his feet touched the cold wooden floor. He was smiling as he remembered the events of yesterday. He then removed his blanket and jumped up. "Yosh. Today I'm going to be a genin," he said, adjusting his volume so he won't wake up his grumpy neighbors. Shrugging out of his pajamas and his gopher nightcap, he grabbed a towel and headed over the bathroom. After a refreshing shower, he went over to his closet and picked out something to wear. Now, contrary to popular belief, Naruto doesn't have a closet full of orange jumpsuits. Sure, he had 4 or 5 pairs, but even the dead last prankster knows that orange isn't that stealthy of a color. Pushing said orange clothes to the back of the closet, he picked up a pair of dark red pants, which already had a strap for his kunai and shuriken holsters on both thighs, along with strategically placed pockets for holding more shinobi gear, with a black belt for holding utility pouches. The pants were somewhat loose and ended just above his ankles. After that came a muscle shirt of the same color, which had sleeves that covered most of his upper arms, reaching just above the elbows. It also had a few pockets for holding ninja gear and a few scrolls. After that he picked a midnight blue vest that had straps to hold a kodachi, a ninja 2, or a full-size katana without the strings on them, as well as a few places to store other weapons and scrolls. He then picked up a large roll of fighting bandages in a sky blue color, bandaging his exposed skin where his clothes did not reach. He paid special attention on his upper arms as he bandaged the kanji of the Hokages. He then adjusted his usual shinobi gear, kunai and shuriken holster, and utility pouch on the right places. Securing his hit I-8 to his forehead, he proceeded to make his ramen breakfast. Checking carefully if his milk was expired before drinking a glass. Grabbing his frog wallet, which he fondly named as Gama-chan, he locked the door to his apartment with 30 minutes to spare until the bell signaling the start of the Ninja Academy session for the day rings. As he walked briskly, he ignored the cold and hate-filled stares he was getting from the villagers, even though some were surprised that he was not shouting about and making mischief, along with his new attire. Some of his classmates called out to him, asking why he had a hit I-8 already. He just simply said he graduated earlier than expected, gave them a half grin, before leaving them dumbstruck. That was when some of them noticed his new clothes. Some of his classmates didn't even notice him as he passed them by because of his new attire and demeanor, along with the hit I-8. As he entered the academy grounds he suddenly found his rival, Uchiha Sasuke, staring at him. Tagging along with him was his loudest fangirls, Sakura and Ino. Sasuke looked at him with an appraising glare and then started to speak in a condescending tone. "What's with the attire, dope? Wanting a little more attention? And from whom did you steal that hit I-8? Did you grab that from some novelty store?" Naruto stared at his rival with cold eyes and let out an unearthly growl, making the fangirls behind him to flinch. "For your information, team, I got this forehead protector fair and square, it's rightfully mine. I took the graduation exam a year earlier because it was within my right to do so." At this the three displayed confused expressions, though Sasuke recovered pretty fast, replacing it with his cold look. Sakura barged in on the conversation. "You're lying. There's nothing in the graduation exam rules that says you can take the test earlier." Ino piped in. "Yeah. If there was a rule like that, Sasuke-kun would have graduated earlier than all of us." Naruto looked at the two fangirls and snorted a laugh before turning his back at them. "You think I'd lie about that? Shows how much you three know, especially you. Early graduation is a written rule on the academy. It just isn't mentioned on the official academy pamphlet. To take the graduation exam earlier, you have to have permission from both your Chunin sensei and your parents. This is so you don't lose confidence if you fail. That is also why genin graduation is only allowed when a student turns 12. Since I'm an orphan, I don't have anyone taking care of me, and since I live alone as well, I'm my own guardian. If you don't believe me, why don't you ask Iruka sensei yourselves? And oh, the graduation exams ended yesterday, so you can't graduate this year. I have to talk to some of our classmates before I leave, so I'll see you three later. Naruto thought for a moment, or maybe not. He walked away from them as he stuck out his tongue. The still academy students turned away, each to their own thoughts. That dope graduating earlier than me, heh. Let's see how he fares out there. Yeah, he won't last a month as a ninja. I wonder if what that Naruto said was true. He was always trying to trump Sasuke-kun, so this might be another prank. Yeah. Just another prank. Iruka sensei never said there was a way you can graduate earlier on the academy rules. This must be another trick of his. Inner Sakura added her 2 cents while wringing a plushie's neck, resembling Naruto in his usual orange jumpsuit. Hell yeah. It's just another trick. When I get my hands on that Naruto no baka. Shinero. After a minute of mind silence, they stuck their chin up, their minds synchronized with one thought. Let's see if what that dope idiot baka said was true. I'm going to ask Iruka sensei. Naruto then noticed his friends lounging around some benches over a small hill rise. Nara Shikamaru was as usual, looking up the clouds. Akimichi Choji was eating chips, while Inuzuka Kiba had Akamaru on his head. Aburame Shino was close by on one of the tree branches, talking to one of his Kikai bugs, while Hyuga Hinata was sitting under the tree Shino was sitting on. Akamaru barked and Kiba looked up, a little surprised at Naruto's new look. Hey loudmouth, what's with the new outfit? Hearing Kiba's voice, Shikamaru, Choji, Shino, and Hinata looked at Naruto, with Hinata blushing as he stared at his new attire. He's looking much more handsome than usual. Naruto waved at his classmates as he approached. Oheu Kiba, Akamaru, Shikamaru, Choji, Shino, Hinata. He was met with a bark from Akamaru, a nod from Shino and Shikamaru, a wave from Choji, and a shy greeting from Hinata. Oh Oheu, and Naruto-kun, she said quietly as she twiddled her fingers together. Naruto nodded at her greeting, then turned his attention back to Kiba. Yo dog breath, I was just coming over here. Naruto explained as he walked closer to the group. That was when the five focused on his hit I-8. When did you graduate, Naruto? Shino said in a steady voice. Naruto grinned at Shino's acknowledgement. Yesterday, due to extenuating circumstances, they let me graduate earlier than expected. Kiba looked wide-eyed and blurted out his words. And no way. There's no way Iruka sensei let you graduate early. Naruto gave Kiba a slightly annoyed look and revealed the requirements for early graduation. After his explanation, Shino nodded his understanding, as well as Shikamaru, who sighed while still looking up at the clouds. Do you realize that early graduation means an early troublesome life for you, Naruto? An early start as a ninja will just get you killed. Are you really prepared for a troublesome position like that? He looked pointedly at the blonde boy, while Hinata mentally agreed on his musings. She was saddened that she won't be able to see him this year at the academy. But she was more worried about his early start at being a ninja. Naruto touched both of his upper arms briefly and felt the hit I-8 on his forehead, seeming to find comfort on its familiar pressure. He then smiled, his first true smile at his friends. Hinata blushed as she saw his smile. She was delighted to finally see a smile that reached her crush's eyes. Well, I really have to graduate early. I have found precious persons who acknowledge me for my strength. They expect great things from me, as much as I expect great things for myself. Besides, I'm sure you're all going to catch up to me next time we meet. A year isn't really that long anyway. Well, I have to go and see which team I'm placed in. I expect to see all of you next year as genin, okay? He then shook Kiba's hand and patted Akamaru, scratching behind his ears and his neck. He then touched Shikamaru on his shoulder and nodded at Choji and Shino. Naruto then approached Hinata. He didn't know why he needed to say farewell to the girl, and he guessed it was because Hinata's the only girl who notices him for who he is. Hinata stood up as he approached, already blushing shades redder than usual, while avoiding to look at the face of her crush. Naruto nodded at her and started to talk. Good thing Hinata managed to cover up the fact that she jumped, startled by her crush's voice as he began to speak. Well, Hinata, I expect to see you next year with your team, okay? I know you're going to make it as a genin. Good luck on the academy this year. He smiled as he extended his hand. Hinata looked up, but instead of reaching for Naruto's hand, she gave him a brief hug, to which she pulled back off as quickly. Naruto never noticed her tomato-red expression as she lowered her head, never looking back at her crush's gaze on her. GG good luck na Naruto K-kun, spoke the blue-haired girl as she ran off. The four boys had different expressions as they watched Hinata go. Kiba had a mischievous grin on his face as he looked at his partner. HMMN, looks like someone has a crush on someone, right Akamaru? Akamaru barked as he grinned like only a dog can. Shikamaru said something about girls being troublesome. Choji just nodded as he opened another bag of chips, while Shino stayed silent. Naruto was clueless as ever, emitting a huh. He then shrugged it off, as it was a typical behavior of Hinata. He then waved goodbye to his classmates and walked to the senior classroom on the academy where the newly graduate genins were placed in teams. As his form disappeared inside the building, Kiba grumbled. No fair becoming genin earlier than us. Shino turned to look at Kiba. Jealous. The bug user ninja asked. Kiba growled as Akamaru whined at his partner. The little Chaoji swallowed his chips before adding his opinion. Well, from what Naruto said to us, his early graduation just put a lot of pressure on him. Shikamaru added his 2 cents to the conversation. So troublesome, well, I just hope he can handle that pressure. Shino turned his gaze to the academy building, ordering one of his bugs to spy on Naruto. I believe that Naruto deserves the title of the most unpredictable ninja. I think we'll all be surprised on his progress a year later. Chaoji and Shikamaru nodded their assent to the Aburame statement. Well, Kiba just snorted. We'll see after this last year at the academy, we're going to be genin, just like him. Meanwhile, Hinata's sprint didn't take her far, just outside the room where her cousin's class was waiting for their team placements. Seeing Naruto go inside, she hid behind the side of the building. Clasping her hands together, she sent a prayer of luck for her crush. But Naruto-kun, please take care of yourself and may Kami make you grow stronger. As she was saying this, a black speck landed on her shoulder, seemingly intent on observing the events in the room, much like what the lavender-eyed girl is doing at the moment. Iruka looked at this year's batch of graduates. He thought for a moment which of them would make it to this year's batch of genin. He then noticed Naruto's presence as he walked into the room, noticing his new attire. He nodded his approval at his student's new appearance. Naruto gave him a nod and a small grin as he took a seat somewhere on the middle of the classroom. Iruka watched Naruto make his way to an empty seat, his thoughts focused on his soon-to-be former student as he grinned. Well, maybe Naruto will break tradition again and instead we'll have 10 genins graduating this year. When he felt that there wasn't going to be a latecomer, he cleared his throat as he started his speech. Naruto walked into room 109 instead of his usual classroom number 105. As he entered the classroom, he noticed half of the graduating class were there already, including Iruka. His sensei nodded as he walked in the room. He then gave his sensei a grin and a nod while he waited for his name to be called for his team placement. After a few minutes, he heard Iruka clear his voice, which started the meeting. Good morning to all of you and congratulations on passing the genin exam. Today you will be placed on 3-man teams along with a jounin sensei to make up a genin cell to start off your careers as ninjas of the leaf. After the team announcements, you will stay in this classroom to wait for your jounin sensei to pick you up. Now, usually a graduating class consists of 27 to 30 genins. This year we have an exception, as one of you came from a junior class but managed to wing the exam to pass. Naruto had a small grin on his face as his sensei Iruka acknowledged him yet again. Because of this situation, one team from this year's graduating class will have 4 genins in one cell. Now, for the team assignments. Team 1. Sarutobi looked at the assembled jounins as he talked about what to expect from this year's batch of genins and what the mechanics of some of the newly promoted jounins' genin survival exam would be. He then looked at the more experienced senior jounins who seemed bored of the talks and were just listening. After some more deliberation from the new jounin, he dismissed the meeting. Some of the jounins were excited to gather their cell while others still lounged around the meeting room. After all, the academy just needed 9 or 10 jounins for each graduating batch, and of the 30 or so students, only 9 will make genin. Maybe just this year. Sarutobi grinned to himself, recalling Iruka's report of Naruto severely injuring Mizuki with 100+ shadow replications, with the blonde himself leading the charge to avenge his already waning honor. The third then focused his attention on a rather noisy corner of the room. A jounin in a green leotard and orange leg warmers was talking to a masked jounin who had gravity-defying silver-gray hair, his hit eye covering one eye. The latter ignoring the former's attempts to challenge him, as was usually the typical day-to-day interaction of the two. The Hokage recognized the eternal rivals copycat Nin Sharingan Kakashi and the green beast of Konoha, Mido Guy. Sarutobi called out to the somewhat weird jounin. Well, the weirder jounin of the two. Instantly, he found Guy, who was on the other side of the room, already on his side. The third-generation Fire Shadow shook his head mentally. Weird he may be, but the Hokage recognizes Guy's prowess in Taijutsu. Sandaime was contemplating his choice of words to say at Guy so that he can get the best answer from one of his elite jounin. Sandaime had just gathered his thoughts as he looked at Konoha's proud green beast and then spoke. What would be your answer if I said that you're going to be part of an experimental training program to teach a 4-man cell of genin instead of the usual 3-man cell? Guy proudly beat his chest and raised his arms. Of course I would accept, Hokage-sama. This is a fine opportunity for me. But first they would have to pass my test. It is true that teaching a 4-man cell of genin will not be an easy task, but I will be delighted to teach them. I will also have a victory over my eternal rival Kakashi, as he has never passed a team. Given time and my exceptional training methods, they will no doubt grow to be the strongest genin in the village. Because I am Mido Guy, the proud green beast of Konoha. And I strive to never fail a task assigned to me. Guy shouted as he struck up the nice guy pose and smiled, the glint of his teeth mildly blinding the Hokage for a second. Kakashi turned a bored eye to his eternal rival across the room for a second. He then diverted his attention back to the book he was reading, labeled Icha Paradise Bowl. 3. Kakashi had a bored tone as he spoke to his eternal rival. HN? Did you just say something, Guy? Hearing the usual words, Guy's face turned red in embarrassment as waterfall-wide tears poured from his eyes and cascaded down his face, all the while shaking a finger at his eternal rival. Ooh. As expected of my eternal rival. Brushing me off completely with his cool, hip ways. The Hokage broke Guy's musings and ordered the Green Beast to pick up a team assigned to his command already. As Guy left the meeting room in a green blur with his team's names, Kakashi closed his book and casually strolled out the door. The Hokage gave a pointed look behind the copy ninja's back. Given his reputation of punctual lateness, it would be a while before picking his potential students up. Saratobi's thoughts then turned back on the scroll of seals. I really have to discuss that footnote with those two. Naruto paid attention as Iruka announced the names for the genin teams. After reading the names for Team 8, everyone realized that the last team roster that Iruka will be reading would consist of 4 members. And last, but definitely not the least, Team 9. Hyuga Neji, Kiramai Tenten, Rock Lee and Uzumaki Naruto. There were murmurs from almost the entire senior class. Uzumaki? Who's that? That kid who my mom calls a freak. Oh yeah. That prankster kid who painted the Hokages' faces on the monument about a dozen times. Oh, that Naruto kid. Who's Naruto? Where's Naruto? One graduate said as he was looking at a game book, trying to find Naruto instead of Arnold. Suddenly, Naruto felt the temperature drop a notch as he was subjected to some of the coldest and hardest stares he had to endure in his lifetime, half the reason being the senior class disliked him because of his pranks, half reason being the self-proclaimed, the collective Neji fangirls of Konoha TM. Glowered at him for being picked to be in their idol's team, but mostly because their parents told their children to avoid him and hate him with a passion they did not care to explain themselves. Naruto shuddered in anger. Guzo, this is like Sasuke team's fan club all over again. Damn those stares, can't see that I'm not Kyuubi. I'm just a vessel for the demon, damn it. Sensing the rise of hostility levels, Iruka closed the roster folder with a snap, catching the attention of a whole class. Like I said prior to reading the team placements, please stay here until your Jounin sensei picks you up. Good luck to all of you, and may your careers be fruitful. Iruka nodded as he said farewell to the class, nodding at Naruto as the blonde gave him a grateful smile. Exiting the door, he proceeded to room 109, where Naruto's classmates were waiting for him to teach them again for another year. After Iruka left the class separated into their respected teams, Naruto then noticed the other people that would make up his team. HMMN, that must be Hyuga Neji, he also has pupil-less eyes like Hinata. I wonder how they're related. He then paid attention to the only girl in their group who was absently playing with a kunai. Denton, huh? Looks like she likes weapons. If she's not like one Sasuke's fangirls, we'll get along rather nicely. His musings were broken by a voice that sat beside him. Excuse me, are you Uzumaki Naruto? Naruto turned his head to the voice and smiled. Yes, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, pleased to meet you. And you're Naruto held out his hand. The other boy promptly grasped his hand and shook it with a little more eagerness than usual. Hello Uzumaki-san, I am Rock Lee, it's a pleasure to meet you. Naruto then observed his teammate. He wore a white undershirt with loose sleeves, along with a light green Chinese-style jacket, which was open fully and seemed to conform to his undershirt. He also wore matching pants of the same style and color. His hit I-8 was worn in the traditional style on his forehead, the cloth of the hit I-8 in bright red. Naruto then noticed his big round eyes and the caterpillar-like eyebrows, with the cartoon-esque 3 eyelashes on the bottom of his eyes completing his look. Naruto squashed the urge to shudder. Looks did not matter. Rock Lee was a potential teammate, ally, and friend. Lee then sighed out loud, which broke Naruto's musings and urge to shudder. I think it's fair to warn you Uzumaki-san, just call me Naruto, Lee-san. It'll be easier for both of us. At this Lee smiled, but sighed again as his face turned sad. As I was saying Naruto-san, it's fair to warn you that I'm the dead last of the class. Naruto frowned at this statement. Why are you dead last then? Lee then stared straight into Naruto's eyes. I can't mold chakra. I can't perform jutsus, even the most basic ones like Kawarimi, Henge, and Bunshin no Jutsu. From the start of my academy schooling until now, I still can't do a single jutsu. Naruto's eyes then scrunched up to his fox mode. So what? Lee's head, which was beginning to droop closer and closer to the desk, suddenly shot up. Eh? Why don't you care if cannot mold chakra? The other students and my teachers. Naruto then signaled Lee to pause for a moment and gave Lee one of his true smiles. So what if you can't mold chakra? Hell. At that moment Naruto edged closer to Lee and whispered as to how he almost didn't graduate early with his crap Bunshin and how he made up for it by learning Kage Bunshin. He excluded the part about getting tricked and stealing the scroll of seals and seeing the past and present Hokages, but included the part where he beat Mizuki with his Kage Bunshin. As he finished his story, Naruto gave Lee a foxy grin. "See, Lee? Even people like us prevail sometime. To tell you the truth, I'm also the dead last of my batch." Lee's eyes filled with tears as he hugged Naruto. "Naruto-kun. You are an embodiment of us dead lasts." Naruto just laughed nervously and patted Lee awkwardly, earning him some glares and some curious stares. After Lee had a good cry on Naruto's vest, they both smiled as they swapped some stories of their adventures inside and outside of class. Lee told Naruto of Mido Guy, a jounin of Konoha whom he looked up to. Lee explained that he was a Taijutsu specialist and he thought that maybe Lee could follow in his footsteps. Naruto then told Lee that it was possible that he can also be a Taijutsu specialist. Lee went back to normal totally after Naruto's encouragement. Naruto then narrated all of his pranking days before and during the academy. Needless to say, the two had formed a fast friendship and were treating each other as buddies even before Guy came. Eventually, Neji and Tenten, who introduced themselves to the two boys, joined them. Tenten was okay in Naruto's book as she even swapped her own tales with the two boys. It was needless to say that the Hyuga was off in his own little world in which he explained as meditation. More like brooding like someone I know, Naruto thought. Sasuke sneezed loudly just after the comment was made about him 4 doors away, which earned him with an accurate hit of a chalk eraser to the face courtesy of Iruka, who thought it was Naruto disrupting the class again. This earned a snicker from a certain Inuzuka and a bark from his dog companion, a grin from a Nara and an Akamichi, a small grin hidden behind a hand of a certain shy, lavender-eyed girl, and a hidden smirk under the collar of a bug-controlling, sunglasses-wearing boy. Their movements were unnoticed as their Chunin sensei / distraction apologized to the dark-haired Avenger / Ice Cube / idol / fantasy of every girl from 8 to 50 / hot guy / bishounen / seam / asshole / bastard / traitor to be / well, you get the picture. Besides, they were far away enough from the Uchiha and his fan club to warrant a glare from any one of them. Sasuke's anger intensified as his most ardent stalkers fussed over his face, which earned him and the two Kunoichi to be an eraser each, saturated with chalk, this time because the three were being too loud, earning them even more laughs and snickers and smirks. Paying attention to their own faces, they sighed, as the source of their misfortune, and now anger, wasn't there anymore. They then realized that Naruto had just played a prank on them. Even if he wasn't in the room or the immediate area, they dropped their heads in defeat as they once again performed synchronized thinking for the second time that day. Damn that Naruto. When Naruto goes to bed tonight, he'll fall asleep with the widest and truest grin in his 11-year-old life. Feeling that justice had been served, at least for today. Naruto pulled his kitsune hanky just in time to catch his sneeze in the cloth, with Lee saying bless you. And Tenten saying Jizundid. Neji just said, don't spread your germs on me. And returned to his brooding / meditation. Eventually the Jounins came in and called their respective teams to move out. Each team then followed the Jounin assigned to them. About a third of the teams were now gone in the time span of 30 minutes. After a few minutes more, the door to the room swung open violently, catching an unfortunate graduate off guard who toppled 11 other people when he crashed into them going at 50 miles per hour. Needless to say, 3 Genin teams were already injured and they haven't even undergone their Genin survival exam yet. As the dust settled, the graduates in the room noticed that 12 of their classmates were in a tangled mess of bodies, some were even in a very compromising position, which the conscious ones capitalized on and mentally noted in their minds to tease their unconscious peers, whether they were in the right gender group or whether they had crushes on the wrong people. And 2, there was a weird Jounin at the door with a brightness to his teeth that almost rivaled the sun itself and was parading around in a green leotard with orange leg warmers. Speaking in his indoor voice, the Jounin introduced himself, which shook the entire first floor in the process. The dark-haired Avenger managed to change seats, pondering that maybe his bad luck was affected by where he sat, and reasoned that whenever his most loyal fangirls an. Translate. Rabid stalker Sakura and Ino sat beside him, bad luck was abound. Little did he know that the author of this AU fic was controlling his luck. Who unfortunately for him, didn't like his guts. As Guy used his indoor voice, the whole first floor shook. Iruka had a vein on his forehead as Guy continued speaking. Having popped his vein as the whole floor shook several times more, Iruka reached into his pouch and pulled out a set of what he thought was blunt wooden kunai. He always threw these at Naruto whenever he became too overbearing when the erasers weren't doing their job. Throwing them absent-mindedly, he waited for the sounds of the kunai to hit his intended target, along with an it. And a curse word or two, or so he thought. At the shrieks of Kaya and Sasuke-kun, he realized he made a mistake. Sasuke sat on his haunches while gripping the top of his chair, an awesome feat in itself, but it was overshadowed by the reason that he needed to keep his reproductive parts whole. Sasuke was apparently sitting on Naruto's second favorite spot in the class. A newly bought razor-edged kunai barely missed Sasuke's prize jewels TM. By a hair's width. A millimeter more and pity. No more chance to revive the Uchiha clan. Checking where his other kunai went, his eyes bugged out as he saw that Ino and Sakura barely managed to avoid his other kunai. They were unfortunately seated on Naruto's third and fourth favorite spot in class, respectively. Ino was barely saved by her waist size, it didn't stop the kunai to draw blood on her skin though, not to mention that a grinning Nara pulled her out of the way at the last second, which deemed her reason for dieting to the Nara male as troublesome. Sakura, being the smarter girl of the two, just ducked, but the kunai still managed to shred a length of her hair, just above the ear. The cut hair then pulled by the floor, proof of the kunai's sharpness. Her long hair was now uneven in length, if she was any more unluckier, and the kunai had flown some angles higher, she would be half bald by now. Hey. At least that big forehead of hers was useful for something. Two other kunai, fortunately or unfortunately, whichever way you call it, almost killed two of Sasuke's other fangirls. Unbridled laughter was showered upon the unfortunate five by the rest of the class, especially the now dubbed annoying trio. Sobering up quickly though, the rest of the class who didn't want anything to do with Sasuke's unusual bad luck avoided him like a plague until the end of class day. In turn, Sasuke avoided Sakura and Ino, as well as his fan club, in the same manner. The collective Sasuke fangirls of Konoha TM avoided their president and vice president like their life depended on it, while the rest of the class looked on in amusement. For them, this day was starting to be very, very interesting. And it wasn't even lunchtime yet. The annoying trio sighed and hoped in sync that their bad luck was over. As they mused their thoughts, the trio heard a disembodied and malevolent male cackle, which didn't bode very well for them. Once again with one thought in mind, they cursed their misfortune on one person who seemed to be pranking them with a vengeance, even though he wasn't there at all. Damn that Naruto. Guy's indoor voice shook the classroom as he spoke with enthusiasm. Naruto's sneeze didn't even interrupt his speech. Yosh. I have come to pick up Team 9. Hi Uganiji. Kiramai Tenten. Rock Lee. And Uzumaki Naruto. After hearing their names, Team 9 stood up and approached their sensei to be. Guy looked at Tenten, Neji, and Naruto with an observant eye. Lee then greeted Guy excitedly and bowed. Another Jounin entered just minutes after Guy opened the door and called out to Teammate. Teammate got up and followed their assigned Jounin out of the classroom. Mido-sama. It's been a long time. Guy then looked at Lee and bowed as well. Yes Lee-kun, it's been a long while since we last met each other. Well then, we have to get going. The burning passion of youth awaits. Follow me and try to keep up. At this Guy disappeared in a green blur out of the academy. Naruto's eyes widened. Past. Neji and Tenten just sweat-dropped at Guy and Lee's interaction. Lee was first out of the door, following Guy in a sprint. Tenten and Neji followed him while Naruto held the rear, their direction heading to the farthest corner of the academy, populated by covered and elevated resting places, which looked like pagodas. The three teams on the floor, injured, but nonetheless followed their Jounins later, and Team 9 being called to follow the Jounin sensei assigned to them, and having left already, only one team of graduates was left to wait for their sensei. Unfortunately they will have to wait 3 more hours before their sensei finally decided to pick them up. Cosmic irony. You be the judge, dear readers. After the sprint they climbed one of the balconies where Guy was standing. Lee arrived first, followed by Naruto, Neji, and lastly Tenten. Guy observed their breathing and found that Naruto was the least winded by the run, followed by Lee. Neji and Tenten breathing harder the most out of the four. Asking them to sit surrounding him, he began their meeting. Good morning. I am Mido Guy. A Jounin of Konoha. I have been picked to teach you 4 passionate youth. This team, according to our great and kind Hokage-sama, is an experimental type of team, as a regular Genin team consists of 4 people, a Jounin sensei and 3 Genins to make 1 cell. Hokage-sama has decided to experiment and put together a Genin cell composed of 4 Genins and a sensei. Now, how about you graduates introduce yourselves to me, tell the green beast of Konoha what your likes, dislikes, hobbies, dreams for the future, etc. are. After a second of silence Lee stood up. Sir. I am Rock Lee, 12 years old. I like training and my adoptive parents. Since they have taken care of me since I was an orphan. I dislike people telling me that I have no potential as a ninja. My hobbies are exercising and strengthening my body. My dream is to I nodded and showed Lee his nice guy pose. Lee then beamed back at his sensei. Neji just scoffed loudly and the others turned to him for an explanation. A ninja using only Taijutsu and physical strength. You have no place to be a ninja if you can't use jutsu. That was your fate from the beginning of your studies at the academy. You are not destined to be a ninja. After Neji finished Naruto growled at him and clenched his fist. Lee was saddened by Neji's remark, while Tenten frowned. I don't think so. All of them looked up at Guy. A ninja who doesn't use ninjutsu and jinjutsu exists. And you're looking at him. He shouted as he beat his chest. Although I can use ninjutsu and jinjutsu, I choose not to use them. As my eternal rival Kakashi-kun excels at ninjutsu and can see through most jinjutsu with his Sharingan. That is why I have chosen Taijutsu as my specialty. Lee visibly brightened at that remark. After hearing this new information, Naruto raised his hand. Who is this Kakashi you're talking about, sensei? And what is the Sharingan? Guy turned his head at his blonde student-to-be. Ada Kakashi, also known throughout the shinobi world as Copycat Nin Sharingan Kakashi, master of 1,000 jutsu. A genius ninja, he graduated from the academy at age 5, became Chunin at 6, a Jounin at 12, and Anbu captain by 14. Under his hit I-8, he hides the bloodline limit of the Uchiha, given to him by his friend. A Sharingan lies covered in his left eye. When he brings it out in a battle, he can copy most ninjutsu, see through the toughest ninjutsu, and evade most styles of taijutsu. But enough of him today, our focus is on you and our team, and because you asked a question, you shall be next. Naruto nodded in compliance and stood up. Hello to all of you, I am Uzumaki Naruto, 11 years old, I was an academy student a year behind you, until yesterday when I managed to convince Iruka sensei to let me take my graduation exam early. I like ramen, people who see me for who I am and not what I am, and training myself to be a better ninja. I dislike the 3 minutes it takes for ramen to cook and people who hate me with a passion, with coldness in their eyes, and who stare me down, as though I am the lowest kind of person. Like Lee, I also dislike people who put me down and say that I will never amount to anything. When I found out the reason why they hate me, I resolved to myself that one of my goals is to try and convince them that their hatred for me was misplaced. I also hate other people that bully other people or put them down, like what they do to me. My hobbies are eating ramen, training, and pranking anyone and everyone who mistreat me. My dream is to one day be Hokage, to prove to the people who hate me that their hatred and anger against me was misplaced, and to prove my existence to be worth something. Naruto sat down, his speech awed Guy, Lee, and Tenten. I nodded at his student. Yosh. Your passion is burning brightly, Naruto-kun. As your sensei, I will help you in the difficult path that you have chosen. I will help you take the path of Hokage. Naruto smiled at his sensei, who was also smiling back at him. Neji then narrowed his eyes at Naruto, his eyes filled with a condescending look. Hokage? A person like you wants to be Hokage. Fate chooses who should be Hokage. The fire shadows of Konohagakure no Sato, whose faces are seen on the Hokage memorial, were destined from birth to be Hokage. An idiot like you does not have the Hokage destiny in his fate. You should give up your dream and focus on more attainable dreams. Hearing Neji's speech, Naruto just clenched his bandaged arms and shuddered as he controlled his fury. See, control yourself, Naruto, Shikari Shio. Remember what Iruka told you last night, think before you act. You're determined to change yourself, right? Just ignore his speech and focus on rebutting his statement. Closing his eyes and taking a deep breath while counting in his mind to 20, Naruto opened his eyes, which still had a small amount of fury in them. Nonetheless, the voice he let out was calm and controlled. True, I wasn't fated to be Hokage yesterday, you were right about that. But that fate has been changed. I will attain the rank of Kage, maybe not now, but someday. But even if it weren't my fate and destiny to be Hokage, I would still want to attain it. To be Hokage was, and still is, my childhood dream. To be respected and acknowledged by everyone. I also want to protect this village, even after all that they have done to me. I, Lee, and Tenten all let out a relieved sigh, never realizing they were holding their breath at the tension that Neji instantly created, which Naruto dispelled just as easily. Guy shook his head at the future arguments these two will spark if they passed as genins, and motioned to Tenten that it was her turn. She then stood up and introduced herself. I am Kiramai Tenten, 12 years old, I like my family, especially my mom and dad. I also like weapons, training with weapons, and seeing my dad and mom make weapons. I like looking after our weapons store the most and seeing the satisfied look our costumers have in their face when they use them and when they keep coming back to buy more. I dislike people who use weapons carelessly and don't take care of them properly. I also don't like bullies who hurt people who can't defend themselves. My hobbies are helping my mom and dad with making weapons and trying out weapons, which my mom and dad are inventing or experimenting. My dream is to one day be a powerful and high-ranking kunoichi, like my idol Tsunade-sama, one of the 3 Sannin of Konoha. Tenten sat down after delivering her speech. I motioned over to Neji. Standing well still while opening his closed eyes and crossed his arms over his chest, Neji spoke with a voice filled with underlying contempt and hate. I am Hyuga Neji, 12 years old. I am a member of the Hyuga clan branch house. I like training and my family, especially my deceased father. I hate the main house and their way of ruling the Hyuga clan, especially the clan head, Hyuga Hiashi, who is my uncle, as well as his family. I also hate the caged bird seal. I have no hobbies. My dream is to someday prove that the branch house is stronger than the main house. As Neji sat back down, Guy broke the tension everyone felt from the wide-eyed boy with his booming voice. Well then. Now that the introductions are over, we are going to do something, which will involve just the 4 of us. Naruto raised his hand. What will we be doing, Guy Sensei? Guy motioned for Naruto to wait for his explanation and handed the 4 genins a computer printout. Before we become an official genin team and do missions and other team bonding activities like training and such, I will have to give you an exam, a survival exam. The genins looked at him, puzzled. What the academy does not tell you and the fresh graduates of each year is that after graduation, the jounins give the graduates assigned to them a final exam. Out of the 27 or 30 graduates, or in this year's case of 28 graduates, only 3 teams, usually 9 graduates, will make this year's batch of genins. But since there are 4 of you, 10 genins could graduate this year, a rare exception in itself. It is rare for Chunin senseis to approve the early graduation of a student. That is why this exam has a 66% chance of failure. The final exam, or what jounins generally call the Genin Survival Exam (TM), will vary depending on the jounin. Those who don't pass the survival exam are sent back to the academy for further lessons and instruction until next year. As I am the one giving the graduation exam, it will be more difficult than usual. In this survival exam I will be testing your initial abilities and then I'll assess what you have to work on in your skills. Now, I'm giving you a choice to take your survival exam today, or we can do it tomorrow. Which one will you choose, Team 9? Team 9 looked at each other, seeming to seek an answer from their comrades' eyes. Naruto then looked up at Guy. Is there any difference if we choose to take the test tomorrow or today? I nodded at Naruto's intelligent question. There's a slight advantage to taking it tomorrow than today, Naruto-kun. If you choose to take it tomorrow, you will have gained a full night's rest, along with a clear mind and heart. Choosing to do it today just shortens the time to find out if you will pass my exam or not. Naruto nodded and sat down, looking at Tenten, Lee, and lastly Neji. Naruto took a deep breath. I say we put it to a vote. We also explain our vote as to why we want to take it today or tomorrow. The other 3 nodded. Naruto grinned as he stood up. Well, I might as well be the first. I choose to take it tomorrow because I have some things to do today that just won't wait. The Hokage has ordered me to report to the Hokage Tower later. I also have some things to do before the day ends, so I just can't really take it today. He motioned to Lee, who stood up as he sat down. Sensei. I think it is more advantageous for us to take the test tomorrow. This will let our burning passion be refueled to burn brighter by fully resting. Lee then executed his first version of the nice guy pose, which Guy returned with equal fervor. Yosh. As expected of a student to be of mine. Your burning passion burns bright, Lee-kun. Lee grinned as he sat down. Naruto noticed the sweat drops coming from his other teammates, but just chose to grin on their reactions. Tenten stood up as it was her turn. I choose to take the exam today. I am confident in my skills to pass the exam, as I have an advantage that other genin do not have. She then nudged Neji, who in turn stood up. I don't care if I take the exam today or tomorrow. It is not in my fate to fail whatever exam you are planning. My destiny is to pass this exam and prove the main house that they chose to anger the wrong Hyuga. After he sat down the whole balcony was silent. Naruto had a sweat drop and a vein on his head. Arrogant bastard. Tenten and Lee had a confused stare on the brooding Hyuga while Guy nodded thoughtfully at Neji's words. After the voting was done, Naruto spoke up. So that's 2 votes for taking it tomorrow, 1 vote to take it today, and 1 undecided. So we're going to take the exam tomorrow, Guy Sensei. Guy nodded at the team's decision. Well then. Meet me on training grounds 7 am in the morning, tomorrow. And don't bother to eat breakfast, because I cannot guarantee that it will stay in your passionate stomachs. Meeting dismissed. As soon as he said dismissed, Guy became a green blur again and zoomed out of the pagoda. The surprising thing was that he didn't fall on his descent. Naruto was impressed at his sensei for the 2nd time that day. Hey Lee just nodded vigorously. Yosh. That's Guy Sensei for you. Tenten produced a minuscule sweat drop on her head. A little quirky, but very strong. Neji was stoic as he crossed his arms. Byakugan activated as he followed his sensei Tupi's progress. Yes, he's very strong for a guy with no blood limit. It would be a nice change to grow under his tutelage and have someone teach me instead of me teaching myself. So Naruto then turned to his teammates as the green blur disappeared around a bend. Anyone up for ramen? Tenten blushed in embarrassment as her stomach growled. I am, how about you two Lee? Neji. Lee nodded once and turned a questioning glance to Neji, who shook his head. I have some training to do today, so I'll just see you tomorrow on the training grounds. The other 3 nodded in assent as the Hyuga prodigy climbed down the stairs. After he was gone, Naruto motioned for the 2 to follow him down. So, what are you going to do after ramen? Naruto asked the 2 once they were back on solid ground. Tenten just shrugged. I guess a bit of training with my weapons and aim, then I'll go home. Say, how about I show you our family's weapons shop today? Naruto shook his head as he looked at the sun. It was nearing 10 am in the morning. Maybe after we pass Guy Sensei's exam tomorrow, Tenten-san. I really have a lot of sorting out to do today. The brunette nodded her assent and turned to Lee. What about you, Lee? Lee contemplated for a bit. I guess some light training after I eat. I don't want to exert myself before the exam. I also agree with Naruto-kun's suggestion with going to your family's weapon shop tomorrow, as well. Naruto and Tenten nodded as the blonde led the way to Ichiraku's. On the way there some of the villagers did the usual when Naruto passed by the more densely populated business and residential district. Lee and Tenten were wary of the villagers as they followed Naruto. Lee was about to ask about this when Naruto spoke up without looking back at them. I see you've noticed them, you'd have to be blind and deaf not to. Tenten and Lee nodded absently. Unfortunately, this happens to me every day. You just have to get used to it. 11 years of seeing this every day will do it. I have some secrets that you won't believe I have. If we do become a team and stick together for a year or more, I'll reveal my biggest secret to the team, even Niji. Just please, don't ask me now, I don't know how I'll do it. Hearing Naruto's pleading voice, the two nodded solemnly as they reached Ichiraku's. Naruto wiped his tears with his hanky as he smiled at the ramen chef and his daughter. Boy. Tuchi-akin. Am Nichin. He shouted as he forced himself back in his brat mindset. Boy Naruto. We missed you here yesterday. What happened? The ramen chef said in a half-scolding, half-chiding voice. Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. Well, I kind of got held up at the academy from the afternoon till early morning yesterday. Tucci formed a conspiratorial grin as he looked at his best costumer, seeing other kids behind him, he spoke. Boy Naruto. Did you bring me more customers? Turning back on his teammates-to-be, he nodded. Yup. These are my teammates, Kiramae Tenten and Rock Lee. I have another teammate called Hyuga Niji, but he's not here. We're going to take an exam tomorrow and pass as Genins. He said while pumping his fist. Tenten smiled as Lee emulated Guy and managed to make his teeth glint at Tucci. Tenten and Lee introduced themselves formally as they sat down on each side of Naruto. After giving their orders they talked about training, weapons, Guy Sensei, and how there's always a stoic bastard on each batch of academy students. After finishing their bowls and paying, they bade farewell to Tucci and Am, with Naruto promising to be back with Iruka later to have a ramen binge before going home. Am was smiling as she cleaned their bowls. It seems like Naruto-kun found some friends his own age, Tausen. Tucci nodded thoughtfully as he looked at their retreating backs. His glance on his favorite customer's back was unfathomably soft and filled with tenderness. Hi, I just hope that his teammates can accept him when they find out what's inside him. Am's smile disappeared. She then nodded solemnly as they prepared for the lunch crowd. Bidding his teammates farewell and good luck, Naruto turned and began to run to the direction of his treehouse. Never noticing the worried stares Lee and Tenten gave his retreating back. After running a bit through the village, Naruto noticed a group of oddly dressed monks in the village square who were being questioned by Anbu. It seemed that the villagers were throwing the same hateful and cold glares he was used to having at the monks. Having seen this particular fact, it piqued his curiosity. It was then that he approached the monks who were unaware of his presence as he used a nearby monument to hide. I wonder which country they came from. From their attire I'd say their clothes were made for long journeys on foot as well as for fighting hand to hand. Regular monks don't look like these monks at all. Indeed, the monks he was spying on were defiantly different from the ones he frequently saw on the village and temples. Most of them were muscular, like they weren't praying or fasting. Some of the other monks had large muscles, which showed on their already moderately loose clothing. A white dugai with elbow-level sleeves was the group's regular attire. Some wore a brown-colored leather cover on the front of their dugai, while others had smaller versions of this. All of them covered their heads with white cloth. The area around their eyes, particularly the eye sockets, were either painted black or brown. And all of their shins, ankles, and feet have thick woolen bandages wrapped around them. They also have them on their hands and arms, reaching just below the upper arms. Apparently he came at the right moment, for the monks were having a guarded and very quiet conversation amongst themselves. He hasn't gone far, he had to have taken up shelter in one of the temples here, with those injuries of his. He won't progress that far in a few nights. One medium-built monk said, as he looked side to side frantically. If what he holds falls into the wrong hands, our way of living is done for. Why did we have to take drastic actions like this? Our cover with master will be blown. Another one hissed. He was a little taller than most of the monks, but he was lean-built. Shut up. Anyone can overhear us talking about him. We are in more trouble if sensei hears this. He's the best student in our year, and if he finds out that some of us are missing, especially him, we won't survive the punishments. Lucky for us, master's away visiting our brother temple. The tallest and most muscular of them spoke, seeming to be the leader of the group. After absorbing what he could out of the conversation, Naruto backed up and headed for his training ground. He can sort out this new information later. Right now he had to read the requirements of the blood ritual for the 3 Doujutsu. As he ran in the direction of his treehouse, he heard a groan somewhere in the east side of the forest. Tracing the voice, he found that it was calling out for assistance. He arrived to see a man similarly dressed like the monks he encountered in the village square, lying face down. It seemed that he was full of wounds, both external and internal. "Help," said the voice. Naruto then helped the man up. Noticing his damaged form, Naruto formed cage buncheons and ordered one to hinge into a stretcher. Another clone helped him to ease the man into the stretcher. It looked like the man was within an inch of life. Naruto then ordered his clones to follow him. They then moved silently under the canopy of dense forest to the direction of Naruto's hideout. Arriving quickly, Naruto and his clones eased the man onto the makeshift bed of leaves, grass, and hay. He then searched his makeshift closet to find his medical kit, which he used whenever he was training in the forest. The man groaned and sat up, surprising Naruto with his resilience. "Please come closer, I'm already dying," said the man, who Naruto now realized as the man the other monks were searching for. Naruto wringed a clean washcloth and cleaned the man's bloodied face. "Your name?" Naruto spoke solemnly. "Uzumaki Naruto." The man smiled. As the stranger drew his strength and organized what he was planning to say, Naruto drew some water from a makeshift water container, which was designed to catch and filter rainwater. Filling a wooden mug, he handed it to the stranger, who drank it like a man who had walked in the desert for a long time. The stranger then nodded to him as he began to speak anew. "Thank you, Naruto-san, few others would have done what you did for me." At those words, Naruto looked at him in confusion. "I don't have a real name anymore, but in the temple, I was called Ange." Naruto nodded as he continued to clean Ange's battered and dying body. "Our group was called the Order of the Depraved Monks. Unlike real monks, we have broken all of Buddha's sins, that is why people hate us and fear us. I was the last one of our order to join for a very long time. As I studied under the order, I have learned all of my master's secrets and techniques, as well as all of the order's ancient techniques and fighting styles, because he felt that I had the discipline and the mindset to not use it for wicked and evil purposes. I then decided to chronicle our knowledge into scrolls, so that even if we may fade away, there would be a memory of our group left behind, which proved that we existed even beyond the time of the demons and the war." Naruto then decided to give Ange one of his soldier pills and a blood-stopping pill. Ange gave him a grateful sigh as he felt energized again, staving off the call of death for a few more moments. "Thank you. As I've said, I've chronicled our order's knowledge throughout the ages in scrolls, but most of it was burnt or stolen by my other brethren. I have a copy of all my scrolls though, so all is not lost. My master agreed of my actions and believed in my judgment, and so he encouraged me to write, but then my other brethren got jealous of my knowledge and closeness to our master. One night when our master journeyed to visit our brother temple, they attacked me in an attempt to learn all of what our master had taught me. I managed to avoid a bloodbath by merely disabling the majority who were only bullied to fight me, but the plotters were too powerful. Combined, I managed to kill half of them, the other half barely got away with less serious injuries. They threatened me that they will tell our master I had killed in cold blood once he returned, which was a blasphemy amongst us depraved monks. Instead of giving them what they wanted, I ran away from the place I once called home. I only had the clothes on my back and the scroll of my most prized technique, the deadliest ever invented and recorded during our history, the dual extreme fighting style. The plotters came after me for the sole purpose of acquiring the scroll. I killed half of them in battles from the mountains until the borders of Fire Country. I was dying when I came through your dense forests and was prepared for death when you found me. I am very grateful to you because my greatest fear was to die alone, with no one to hear my confessions of guilt and share my sadness." Ange then reached into his tattered dugai and pulled out a small but thick scroll. This scroll contains the theory, forms, and usage of the dual extreme, as well as a small history on how I came up with the style. This scroll also shows the location of the map where I hid all the scrolls that I wrote about the order, as well as its secrets and the various weapon and fighting styles. I ask that you keep the contents of this scroll to yourself, please. Promise me that you will only reveal the secrets of my fighting style to your offspring." At those words, Naruto clutched Ange's hand with both hands. "I promise you, Ange, that you have my oath of silence as a man and a ninja of Konoha, that your fighting style, which you have worked so hard to develop and perfect your whole life, will stay secret outside of the Uzumaki clan." Ange nodded and closed his eyes, the blonde ninja barely hearing his last words. "Thank you, Naruto master, brothers farewell." Naruto then felt a burning sensation in his palms. As Ange's hand relaxed, he removed his bandages and saw that on the back of his hand, the kanji for Futi no Kiwami was on both his hands, before fading away completely. That was the last portion of his life energy, which means he's dead. Naruto sent a small prayer to Ange's Buddha to watch over his faithful servant as he journeyed to where souls go after the connection with their mortal body was severed. He then busied about to clean Ange's body for the funeral pyre. Naruto then used another batch of clones to move Ange's body and the bed further into the dense forest. Gathering wood for the funeral pyre was time-consuming. Even more so when he made it so that the funeral pyre would burn slowly as to not alert anyone, ninja or villager, to smoke coming out of the forest. Starting the pyre with an academy-level Kaiten jutsu, he watched as Anja's body was consumed in smoke and fire, the body wrapped in clean bandages under his mended Dukai. Naruto added a prayer scroll, which Anj clutched in his hands. Adjusting the fire so that the least amount of smoke would be made, Naruto turned around to go back to the village, deciding to read the scroll tonight instead of today. As he made his way back to the village he passed by the academy, it seems lunchtime had passed during the time when he found Anj. Stepping inside for a moment he managed to find Kiba and Akamaru. The duo then managed to cover the blonde's mouth before he shouted a greeting. "Not here loudmouth, let's talk outside the gate," Kiba hissed. Naruto nodded and walked out of the academy gate with the partners to a secluded bench. Kiba then narrated Sasuke's and his fan club's misfortunes today. Most of all Ino and Sakura's sadness when Sasuke started avoiding them. Naruto held his sides in laughter as Kiba told him how Sasuke stumbled through the morning with a freakish amount of bad luck, almost getting hit in his privates by a sharp kunai. Stepping on dogshit which Kiba denied to Sasuke that it was Akamaru's, getting hit on the forehead by a blunt shuriken, thrice. Lying down on a mid-activated explosion note, which also triggered a Chunin-level Genjutsu trap, leaving him shirtless and unable to move for 15 minutes. While the senseis in the academy searched for the person who set the trap, in which they found out it was Mizuki, his fan club capitalized on this and eerily produced cameras, sketchbooks, and drawing pads to capture their idol's physique forever in film and on paper, as though they were waiting for this moment for a very, very, very long time. Dock racers and blunt wooden kunai were also hitting the Uchiha Avenger at an hourly basis. As well as the rest of the class avoiding him like a plague. "I dragged you outside because Ice Prince seems to be close to blowing his top. Along with losing his "oh I'm so mighty, you are dirt under my fingernails" stoic face. His fan club is convinced you're playing pranks on him and them. A word of advice. Do not go in there, at least for today." Naruto nodded as he grinned at Kiba and Akamaru, pulling out 2 coupons for Ichiraku he handed them to Kiba and patted Akamaru, who barked in return. Waving goodbye and saying thanks to his friends he sought out the sun overhead. Deciding that there was no time to dawdle, he ran for the Hokage tower at his top speed. Iruka organized his lesson plan on his desk and stood up. The segregated class followed his movement with rapt attention. The Chunin sensei then spoke up. "I have an appointment with the Hokage today, so I will turn over my teaching duties for the rest of the day to your other senseis. The girls will have an early session with Suzume sensei today, while the boys will be supervised on practical weapons use with Isamu sensei. Good day to you all and see you tomorrow." Some of the students groaned their protest, while some of them said farewell to Iruka as they left the classroom. Having briefed his replacements during lunch, he left for his office desk to gather his gear. As the class separated in two, the 4 boys gave Hinata a nod before she followed the other girls to Suzume sensei's homeroom. Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba and Shino joked about the Uchiha Avengers' misfortunes as they fell back behind their other classmates. Kiba then mentioned Naruto's visit during the after-lunch break. Shikamaru then asked the dog-using academy student about the details of Naruto's team. Kiba then shrugged sheepishly. "I forgot to ask him, okay? I was busy dragging the loudmouth out of the grounds before Sasuke and his fangirls could get to him." Shikamaru snorted and spoke. "Troublesome, at least you should have found out his sensei's name." Shino nodded under his collar. "It would have been prudent to ask him about his team's names or his sensei's name. That way we can probably ask around on our free time for their identities and abilities." Kiba grinned at his usually quiet friend's words. "Trying to scope out the competition already, Shino?" The bug-using academy student shook his head. "Not exactly Kiba, knowledge about an enemy's and/or an ally's abilities is half the key to winning a battle. As ninjas, we should exploit every advantage we can have, even if it is over enemies or allies." Kiba laughed at his classmate. "Are you kidding me, Shino? That loudmouth doesn't have the brains and the brawn to be level with us, let alone surpass us." Kiba's laughter followed him as he walked faster to the academy's training grounds. Shikamaru gave Kiba an irritated look as he followed the Inuzuka from behind. Choji was behind them as he munched his chips, the large academy student was also frowning. Shino stayed silent after Kiba's statement, the bug user thinking of Naruto's exploits inside the academy. "Well then Kiba, don't be surprised when Naruto surpasses you. Like I said earlier in the morning. He will surprise us next year. I just hope that you can swallow your overinflated ego if you get your butt kicked." Naruto made it into the tower with 15 minutes to spare. Some of the people who knew what he was turned and glared at him, while some muttered curses to his name, half of them just ignored him with cold shoulders. Naruto, for the first time in his life, threw glares back at the people who gave them. Surprising a few of them. "Be glad this is the Hokage's tower and that I respect the old man, or I would have pranked all of you who hate me." Naruto thought as he walked over to the Hokage's secretary's desk. Naruto now noticed that the Hokage had a new secretary. Hokage Jason must have hired a replacement again. I hope I'll make a good first impression. He thought in his head and prayed that the bad comments about him hadn't had a chance to trickle down to this one. The secretary, although just newly hired, knew what Naruto was. But she had decided long ago to keep neutral on her opinions about the blonde boy. She was confident in her good judgment of other people's character, and the rude comments and the slandered remarks about him didn't sway her decision to form her own opinion about the demon of Konoha. The Hokage will entertain you in about 12 minutes, Yumino-sen isn't here yet as well, so I will have to ask you to wait for him before you both go in. The secretary spoke in a business-like voice. Naruto had learned to pay attention to the voices of people since he was 2. He has learned to differentiate the different tones people use when they are engaged in conversation. He found out the differences when people spoke out to other people and to him. His voice interpretation was so extensive that he knew when people were lying or trying to cover something wrong that they have done. After interpreting the secretary's voice as neutral, he smiled a half smile as he spoke in an even tone with the secretary. No, since Iruka sensei isn't here yet, can I look around for a bit? The secretary gave him a contemplating look and then nodded. Where do you want to go? Naruto pondered for a bit, then answered. I'd like to take a look at where the Jounins hang out. The secretary paused for a second and then gave him directions. Left corridor from here, 5 doors to the right. The Chunin's assignment room is on the 4th door. The Chunin lounge is the door opposite the Jounin lounge. Naruto brightened up and bowed. Arigato. Ano the blonde fox racked his brain for the secretary's name, which she didn't give yet. Izumu-san, Uzumaki-san, Izumu Mayuri Dezu. The secretary reached out her hand. Naruto gave her his best foxy grin as he shook her hand. Arigato, Mayuri-san. Ariwa Uzumaki Naruto Dezu. Yorishiku Onagai Shimasu. The secretary's heart melted as she saw her boyish grin. Yorishiku, Uzumaki-san. Mayuri giggled at the blonde's cute face. Eventually they both laughed as the people around them looked at the pair. Meanwhile the Hokage chuckled as he smoked his pipe. Recognizing Naruto's rare, hurtive laugh, he then made a mental note to himself to give Izumu Mayuri an early raise next month. Imino Iruka entered the tower and greeted the familiar faces there. Even though he was only a Chunin sensei, he was a frequent visitor to the tower. The most recent visits have been about Naruto's addition to the graduation roster, Mizuki's betrayal, and how he tricked Naruto to steal the scroll of seals. The second to the last time he was there was when Naruto painted the Hokage monument for the 12th and hopefully last time. Naruto then led the combined 3/4 of the villages Chunin and Jounin to a wild goose chase, which lasted from early morning till late afternoon. By the time Naruto was caught, almost all of them had to go to the hospital for stamina depletion. The Hokage berated the ninjas in the hospital, chuckling as he joked that they've been slacking off on their training, and wondered out loud how an academy student outlasted most of them in a simple chase. Iruka heard a familiar, yet hardly heard laugh as he entered the inner doors where the Hokage's office is situated. As he walked closer he looked at the Hokage's new secretary and his blonde student/hellion, laughing with her. The reaction of this secretary was new to him, as the previous secretaries treated Naruto with hatred and contempt. I'll put in a good word for her with the Hokage, this secretary seems to be a good judge of character, and her interaction with Naruto proves it. Iruka broke his mental musings as he approached the secretary's desk and introduced himself. Naruto kept quiet as his sensei and Mayuri made small talk after they introduced themselves to each other. After a few minutes the intercom buzzed and the third Hokage's voice sounded through. Izumu-san, have my guests arrived yet? The secretary pushed the intercom button and spoke back. Yes, Hokage-sama, Yumino-san and Uzumaki-san have arrived. The intercom buzzed again. Very well, send them in. The device then turned off as Mayuri removed her finger from the button. The Sandame Hokage-sama will see you now, good day, Naruto-kun, Iruka-san. Mayuri nodded to them. Naruto then gave her a small bow. Hi. Arigato, Mayuri-san. Iruka smiled and nodded to her. Mayuri then got back to work as the two opened the door to the Hokage's office. As they entered the third's office, they were surprised at the usual mess of scrolls and papers the Hokage had to sign and study were now organized in very manageable stacks on another table. Organized from the most important to sign, study, or to look up, as by the Hokage's standards. Iruka and Naruto whistled. Sweet, Hokage Jason's office really looks like an office now. Naruto exclaimed. Iruka just sighed. Naruto, how many times have I told you to show some respect to Hokage-sama? Naruto grinned as he rubbed the back of his head. Lost count. Sandame chuckled as he got out from his private room, effectively breaking their tirade. Just forget it, Iruka-kun, Naruto-kun, and just saying Hokage Jason is proof of his acknowledgement and respect for me, as the Hokage. Naruto nodded vigorously at the statement. Hi. And the reason I call him Jason is because, well, Naruto hung his head as he spoke in a barely heard whisper. I don't have a grandfather of my own. Both of them heard his statement. Sarutobi nodded solemnly as he hugged Naruto. The blonde accepted the embrace as the Hokage patted his back. Iruka recalled how the Hokage gave him the same comfort when he was about the same age. As Naruto calmed down, the Hokage smiled at him. "Well Naruto-kun, how does that hit I-8 feel on your head?" The blonde ninja grinned. "It feels good. I'll take care of this hit I-8 very well because Iruka sensei himself gave this to me." Naruto and Iruka's smile was truthful as student and sensei both recalled their happiness of Naruto's graduation. The Hokage smiled as well. "Well then, there is a reason that both of you have been told to report here. Now, if you would please follow me." The third then motioned to the door of his private quarters. Naruto and Iruka both nodded as they followed the Hokage to his makeshift bedroom, in which he sleeps in when he has to rise very early in the morning or to retire when it was very late in the night. As they entered the Hokage's private bedroom, Naruto saw that the scroll of seals, which he stole yesterday, was opened all the way where the Hokage's letter to the savior of Konoha was located. Iruka looked puzzled as he approached the note of the Hokage's and the dated footnote under it, which was dated just yesterday. Iruka looked at the Hokage with a puzzled face. "What is this letter and footnote doing here, Hokage-sama?" Sarutobi blew on his pipe. "The Hokage's letter to the savior of Konoha has been read. As for the footnote and the date, I believe Naruto-kun can explain what it is." Iruka-kun. They then both looked pointedly at Naruto, who gulped loudly as the afternoon sun settled on Konohagakure. "I am so screwed." Meanwhile, at the academy's meadow, Haruno Sakura and Yamanaka Ino were hanging around under a shade of a tree. The kunoichi lessons Suzume sensei gave were always short and concise, the female Chunin focusing more on the practical use of the instruction she gave for the day. After the lesson, Suzume gave the girls a few minutes of free time to discuss what they have learned before dismissing the class for the day. The rivals for Sasuke's heart were discussing what they learned from their sensei when lunch break was announced. Flashback no jutsu. As Iruka walked out of the classroom for lunch, he was cut short by two of his top students who were calling out to him. "What is it, Sakura, Ino?" Iruka spoke with a hint of exasperation in his voice. Iruka hasn't had breakfast yet, so he was very hungry. His stomach betrayed him at that exact moment, growling loudly as he blushed in embarrassment. Ino decided to take the lead in the conversation, seeing that Sakura was taken aback by Iruka's uncharacteristic tone of voice. "Sensei, we'd like to know if what that Naruto said this morning was true. We saw him sporting a hit I-8 on his forehead today." "Me, forehead girl, and Sasuke-kun didn't believe him because he's always making jokes and pranks and causing mischief. And now, we haven't seen him today after he showed up this morning. So did he really graduate early? Is that hit I-8 on his forehead really his? And why did you let him graduate earlier than us and not Sasuke-kun?" Iruka nodded as he listened to Ino's questions. Keeping a face of neutrality, he proceeded to answer them one by one. "Yes Ino, Sakura. Naruto and I decided that he had all the necessary skills to graduate earlier than all of you. Yes, the rule about early graduation is true. It is just kept from regular students because you need the permission of both of your parents and your sensei to attempt to graduate early. Graduating early sometimes stunts the student's growth as a ninja. If they are not careful, they even may die during missions. That is why it is up to the sensei, if the candidate for graduation is an orphan, to judge whether the student is ready to graduate or not and if he has the necessary skills to do so. Early graduation has always been on the academy rules and regulations. It just isn't mentioned anymore on the official pamphlet the academy distributes to the parents of the students. The regular graduation age was adjusted so that clan prodigies like Hyuga Neji, a year your senior, and geniuses like Sasuke will be kept on the same level as regular academy students. There is of course a reason for this adjustment. The most famous early graduates of the Ninja Academy were Hada Kakashi, who is now an elite Jounin of the Leaf, and Uchiha Itachi, one of our village's most famous missing nin, an S-rank missing nin. Of the two names I mentioned, the latter's early graduation had a bad repercussion on the academy. So the graduation age for academy students has been decided to be at age 12 and not a year earlier than that. And oh, the hit I-8 that you saw on Naruto came from me. I gave him my own hit I-8 as the location we were in had no other ones nearby. This is a new one I am wearing right now." Iruka pointed on the forehead protector on his head. "Now, if there are no more questions, I'd like to get my lunch. So if you'd excuse me." The two girls nodded as they stepped aside. Their expressions were of slack-jawed disbelief, including inner Sakura, who was speechless. Iruka chuckled at the expressions on his students' faces. He sensed another chakra signature spiking up, so he figured that Sasuke was listening in on the whole conversation. "Well, I hope the fact that Naruto managed to graduate early will take them down a peg or two. Sure, I love my students like my children, but their treatment of Naruto isn't right. Parents have the right to play favorites to their children as well." Unfortunately for Iruka, his top 3 students will never hear his musings. Flashback no jutsu, Kai. The two rivals, usually shouting or insulting each other, looked the other in the eyes. Sakura managed to find her voice. So, it was true that Naruto really did graduate early. Ino nodded solemnly as she looked down on the grass. Yeah, I can't believe that the dead last of our class managed to graduate first. It's so surreal. The pink-haired girl piped up. The two kunoichi in training sighed, both shaking their heads. Ah. He probably won't make a good ninja for long. He's probably going to die in one of his missions anyway. The girl with the big forehead shrugged the fact of Naruto's graduation very quickly. Her blonde rival nodded. Right. He'll never be as strong as our Sasuke-kun, right big forehead. Ino countered as she insulted a rival for the dark-haired Avenger's affections. The moment Ino's voice released the insult was when the argument started. The rest of Sasuke's fangirls tuning out their voices while Hinata sat a little distance away from them. Daydreaming about her blonde crush. That's when the author's mean streak struck again. Suddenly, two nests of abandoned, rotting, and maggot-filled eggs dropped down on the two. Caught unawares, they were drenched from head to toe in curdled maggot-filled egg yolk, as well as dried-out grass and twigs and bark, let's not of course forget the eggshells. The final straw was when they smelled each other. Their lunch rising from the pits of their stomachs and hurled at the other's face and body. If there was a more embarrassing situation than being tarred and feathered, this was it. Hinata couldn't help but sink to the ground in soft, barely heard laughter. She hasn't laughed this good in never. This event was hidden well from the rest of the fangirls of Sasuke, as they were too busy laughing at their president and vice president. Voicing out their anger, the pair shouted, "Damn you Naruto." Meanwhile on the practical weapons used training grounds at the academy, the dark-haired Avenger was taking out his anger on the shuriken target assigned to him. The fact that Naruto managed to graduate before him both surprised and infuriated him. He recalled his sensei's words when he confronted him after Iruka had his lunch. Flashback no jutsu. Iruka smiled down at him and then sighed. Sasuke, I'm sure you heard my explanation to both Sakura and Ino, so I don't have to repeat myself to you, do I? And if you're going to demand an early graduation yourself, then I'm sorry to say that the window of opportunity ended yesterday. And as your sensei, I cannot give you permission to graduate early, I have also explained why earlier. Iruka smiled as he left the Uchiha Avenger TM to his thoughts. Flashback no jutsu, Kai. The author was too lazy to look into the angst-ridden mind of one Uchiha Sasuke, who he had described aptly enough in chapter 2. Let's just say that it was about Naruto, his parents, his clan, his brother, restoring the clan, and his revenge. Lame. But he'll indulge the Sasuke fans out there with another look-see. As he emptied his shuriken holster, Sasuke's thoughts turned to Iruka's lecture about early graduation. The fact that geniuses and prodigies were held back to the same level as regular no-talent students incensed his prideful mindset. While dead lasts like Naruto were permitted to graduate early. Add to that the fact that Iruka mentioned his brother as an S-class missing nin, the highest rank hidden villages give to missing nins, and he was throwing his angst aura enough for the males in his fan club to avoid him, as well as the rest of the male class. Isamu-sensei left the class to their own training to discuss something with Suzume-sensei. Figuring that with Naruto not around anymore, nothing would go wrong. HMMN do ninjas believe in Murphy's Law. Oh, how wrong Isamu-sensei was. Adobe. How did he manage to graduate before me? How? Damn it. If I couldn't even beat the dope in a mere graduation test, then how can I kill my brother? The Uchiha clan must be avenged and then restored in its former glory. Otherwise my parents and my clan spirits will haunt me, begging me to avenge their deaths. I will surpass that dope. 1 year won't make a difference for me or for him. He'll always be the dope. The dead last. The idiot. He'll see when I surpass him again. Heh. He'll never be as good as a ninja as I am. But that bastard Itachi is an S-class missing nin. I've heard that it's the highest rank given to nins who turn traitor to their village, but I'll surpass my brother as well. After I kill him and avenge the clan, I'll find a girl, particularly a girl with a bloodline limit ability, and then I'll restore the clan to its former glory. Now you see why the author doesn't even bother writing Sasuke's monologue. As he threw shuriken after shuriken on his target, he didn't notice that one bounced off to one of the traps a Jounin placed in one of the trees. Had a Kakashi, in his drunken state, had made explosion traps on a tree half-assed and promptly forgot to disable them in the morning, along with his hangover. There was no way to trigger the strategically placed logs filled with a dozen half-activated explosion notes hidden with a powerful genjutsu the regular way, unless you bounced off a strategically thrown shuriken to them, or in this case, an angst-ridden throw to. Uh-oh. Sasuke's eyes widened as 24 logs, filled with a dozen explosion tags each, converged on his position. Meanwhile the rest of the male academy students managed to get away from the Uchiha's immediate area. 4 eyes okay, 3 eyes, one was covered by sunglasses in the back of the crowd, widened in amusement at the Uchiha's latest ongoing misfortune. Oh, how revenge is sweet. Sasuke shouted a curse directed at his rival, as explosions rocked the academy training grounds. Naruto. Want to know what happened to our brooding Bishounen? I'll get back to him later, I think. Once again Naruto pulled out his hanky just in time to cover two very loud sneezes. Wiping his nose clean, he grinned at the two men before him. Looks like someone's been talking about me, I've been sneezing all day. Iruka and the third grinned with him. The tension in the room having been diminished, Naruto sighed and walked over to the scroll. Touching it fondly. My life was changed yesterday because of this scroll. Hokage-sama, Iruka sensei. At Naruto's serious voice, the Hokage in Iruka's eyes visibly widened. What happened Naruto-kun? The third inquired at the boy. Naruto smiled wistfully. I met them, Hokage-sama, 3 of the 4 faces on the monument there on the mountain. I have met them, and the day before yesterday I have only known their faces and read about their strength and bravery on the academy books. I have met your younger self as well. I can truthfully say that you were the wisest and the most knowledgeable Hokage among the 4. Seeking Naruto's eyes for a hint of mischief, the 2 men found none of it on the boy, no, the adult before them. Iruka thought he was seeing and hearing things, but here was Naruto, speaking like a mature ninja of the leaf. Who did you meet Naruto? Naruto smiled as he grasped the scroll. Shadame-sama, Nidame-sama, Sandame-sama and Yandame Hokage-sama, the 4 generations of fire shadows of Konohagakure, no Sado. Naruto then revealed the events of the night to the 2 men. He did not leave out a single detail, because these 2 men were among the first to acknowledge him and his potential. As such he will never keep secrets from the 2. He finished the tale with learning Kage Bunshin and confronting Mizuki. Kneeling on one knee, Naruto bowed low and spoke in a very serious voice. Sandame Hokage-sama, I am Uzumaki Naruto, proclaimed by your predecessors and successor as the savior of Konoha. I alone have the power to save this village and the known shinobi world from imminent destruction to both known and unknown enemies, as foretold by the prophecy of the ancestor of the Yamanakas, to the Shadame Hokage-sama. I answer to no one but the Hokage, my loyalty is also bound to the Hokage and its mantle of power. I pledge my life to the continued survival of Konoha and its people. Sandame nodded solemnly. Rise, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto complied and approached the Hokage. Sarutobi furrowed his brows in thought. Now Naruto, can you give me proof that what you are saying is true? Do not worry, I believe everything that you have told me, but the council will dispute your claims as the savior. Naruto nodded in understanding. Can you please wait a minute or two, Hokage-sama? The third nodded as Naruto sat near the scroll of seals, unwrapping his bandages and shedding his vest and shirt off. He revealed the black kanji the Hokages left on his upper arms. Pressing on both Sand and Yan, he proceeded to contact the 3rd and the 4th Hokage's imprints. Sandame-sama, Yandame-sama, I need proof for Hokage Jaisen and Iruka sensei, or I'm afraid they won't believe me. The Hokages being contacted nodded mentally. The young voice of Sandame's imprint spoke wisely. We understand, Naruto-kun. Perform Akuchius no Jutsu like I instructed you to do, include Shadame-sama and Nidame-sama as well. Naruto nodded as he opened his eyes and bit his thumb, drawing a strip of blood vertically on the 4 kanji. After doing the hand seals, Naruto put his palm on the floor. Modified summoning. Hokage imprints. The 3rd Hokage and Iruka watched as 4 separate clouds of smoke materialized on Naruto's sides. Revealing the Hokage's imprints. Iruka's eyes widened. KK Kami-sama. Was his last expression before he fainted. Naruto immediately caught him as he fell using a Kage Bunshin's help, settling him down on the Hokage's bed. Nidame looked at the situation. Use the Tori seal, Naruto. A small squirt of water will suffice to wake him up. Naruto nodded and formed the Tori seal, voicing out the minor water jutsu. Suiten. Mizuten no Jutsu. At those words a very small water ball formed and dropped on Iruka's face. The shinobi Gakuen sensei woke up sputtering. Wah? Is it morning already? As he rubbed his eyes he heard 6 voices laughing at his expense. This time his surprise at seeing the 4 Hokages of Konoha, in their prime nonetheless, was somewhat lessened a bit. Luckily Yandame had the presence of mind of soundproofing the room with a jutsu when he materialized earlier. Iruka scrambled to jump down the bed and bowed down low to the Hokages. Shadame-sama, Nidame-sama, Yandame-sama. It is a great pleasure to meet all of you. I am Yamino Iruka, a Chunin sensei of the Ninja Academy. After the greetings, the younger imprint of Sandame seemed put out. Boy. What about me, Iruka-kun? Hearing the imprint of the 3rd, Iruka apologized profusely for ignoring him. The 4th, 2nd, and 1st countered that he didn't count on Iruka's greetings. As he was the only Hokage of the 4 of them with a living counterpart of himself. The laugh seemed to dissipate everyone's nervousness. After the mood got serious again, the Shadame and Nidame took their leave. If you need a Seru, contact Naruto, as we'll be giving him advice and training sometimes. Shadame waved farewell as he disappeared in ninja smoke. Nidame nodded as he followed his brother's lead. Yandame approached his predecessor and handed Sandame a copy of his will. This will ensure Naruto's ascension as the rightful heir to my techniques and assets, as well as the title of Uzumaki and Kazama clan head. Naruto also has a copy of this. Oh, and if it isn't a bother, can you please update the info about the four of us and any other relevant info for us and about us on the scroll of seals? Sarutobi nodded in compliance as his predecessor's form vanished. Imprint Sandaime approached his older self, cheeks pink in embarrassment. So are you really a pervert like Naruto-kun said? The real Sandaime's cheeks turned red and just nodded. His imprint self just nodded as well when Sarutobi brought out his copy of Icha Icha Paradise, Volume 4. Jiraiya huh? Would you input that info and the book's contents on the scroll as well? Sarutobi just nodded. Naruto sighed at the exchange. I hope I don't turn into a pervert when I grow older myself, I'm starting to hate perverts more and more. He mused in his head as the two Sandaime whispered conspiratorially. Beside him, Iruka had the same look of indignation. While it is true that Iruka was defeated by Naruto's Warrick no Jutsu, he is not perverted even in the slightest way. He was just prone to the occasional dirty thought. Hey, cut him some slack, he is after all, a guy. Imprint Sandaime produced a copy of the scroll that allowed Naruto Cage level access to any information that he would label as useful to him. He then narrowed his eyes at his older self. After the council reads this scroll, Naruto's training, data, and other info about him will be for the Hokage's eyes only, which means he'll be an S-rank secret. The Council of Elders will no longer have jurisdiction on him. All data on him will be classified data. Although his official rank may be Genin, he will answer to you and to you only, so his unofficial rank now is candidate for Sannin. Since you're the current Hokage, you are it. Being it means his protection and training will be up to your decisions. Do not stunt or hold back his growth and training, or it will mean dire consequences for all of us. Agreed. Hearing the dead seriousness of his imprint self, Sandaime nodded. Did he mention the forbidden bloodline? His imprint self inquired. Sandaime nodded in confirmation. According to him, there's a bloodline ritual involved. The imprint of the third Hokage nodded his affirmation at his living self-statement. Assign Naruto to the Genin reserve list if he doesn't pass his Jounin Sensei survival exam. If he does pass his exam, give the team a week of break from missions and/or team meetings. Naruto-kun will need that week to understand the rituals and procedures for the awakening of the bloodline. Explain that Naruto will undergo some extra training before he joins the team officially if the Jounin insists to start missions. Sandaime nodded his agreement at his imprint suggestion. Imprint Sandaime then slowly vanished. I'll be waiting for that Icha update, Saru-kun. Naruto then shook his head. Muttering perverts under his breath. The two men couldn't dispute Naruto's comment as they both had fallen victim to the blonde's anti-pervert technique. Which made the Konoha General Hospital stock up on blood replenishing pills for both civilian and shinobi use. The Hokage then brought out a scroll. Well, the council certainly won't be happy about this. That's why what we have discussed here will never leave this room. Do you agree? Naruto and Iruka nodded their assent. Rolling out the scroll, Sandaime signed his name in blood and the scroll glowed. This is a scroll for blood oaths. Breaking your oath on this scroll will result in a very, very painful death for you. After hearing this, would you still sign the scroll? Iruka nodded and signed his name in blood. The scroll glowed brighter. If this means that Naruto will be protected from the council's clutches, then let it be so. Naruto brightened at his sensei's comment. Stepping up, he signed the scroll in blood. The scroll emitted a powerful light, which then disappeared completely. For the future of Konoha and my precious people, the conversations and the events that happened inside this room will never be uttered by my lips. On penalty of death, I swear this. Sandaime and Iruka nodded appreciatively at Naruto's maturity. Naruto's growing up, the Hokage and the Chunin sensei thought in unison, the latter's eyes burning with an unshed tear. Naruto then proceeded to rewrap the bandages on his arms and put his shirt and vest back on his body. Sandaime opened his door and walked out of the room, closely followed by Iruka and Naruto. The three smiled conspiratorially to each other and grinned. I'll tell you what the council's decision will be on this, for now just carry on your normal duties, expect me to call on you two again after 2 weeks. Iruka-sensei bowed. Yes, Hokage-sama. We will do what you expect of us. Naruto followed his sensei's example and bowed, but only to that extent. Hi, Hokage Jason. Just send us a message if you need us to report. Iruka just looked pointedly at his student as the Hokage laughed. This ends our meeting, you two. Now be off to your own business. And remember, our secret is S-ranked. Sensei and student nodded at their leader, bowing as they bid the Hokage farewell. As they left, Sarutobi grinned his own foxy grin. The council will be pissed when I tell them that the demon will be out of their control. But I wonder what their reaction will be when I tell them that their demon was destined to save their lives. The third generation Fire Shadow mused as he smoked his pipe. Planning on how to break the news to Konoha's Council of Elders like a bombshell. The Hokage may be old, but he loved Naruto's pranks. And decided it was high time he tried one of his own. He also had a mean streak or two, old age be damned. Finally, the academy ended for the day. The whole student body was talking animatedly instead of usually complaining at the end of the day. The rumors flying around the female academy students were about the unusual bad luck of the president and the vice president of the Uchiha Sasuke fan club of Konoha. The latest gossip was that 2 nests full of rotten eggs had fallen on the 2 fangirls, which of course were Haruno Sakura and Yamanaka Ino. They were now so stinky that a skunk, an animal rarely seen in Fire Country, actually had the nerve to wrinkle his nose at them and proceeded to stink them more in retaliation. The rumors on the grapevine said that if you came close to either one of them within a 5-meter radius, you'd actually faint. The male part of the academy's student body, the ones who bothered to gossip, told the others the recent misfortune of one Uchiha Sasuke. At the class of practical weapons use, an errant shuriken thrown by the dark-haired Avenger eerily disrupted a powerful Jounin-level Genjutsu on a tree where the Uchiha's target was placed in. Said errant shuriken triggered the half-assed explosion trap, which released 24 logs filled with 12 explosion tags each on the Uchiha. As the logs homed in on their target, 2 of logs bumped each other, making the notes on said logs to go boom, which caused a chain reaction of explosions. Sasuke had barely managed to pull multiple Kawarimi out of his ass. And by the time 23 logs were destroyed, he was out of chakra. The last log bumped his rear, hard. That was the moment when the log's rope snapped in 2, which sent him flying out of the boys' training ground into the girls' meadow, where Suzume Sensei taught her Kunoichi classes. While in the air, Sasuke was blaming his misfortune on the academy's resident prankster. That's when the explosion tags on the last log exploded in unison. The notes somehow eerily avoided Sasuke's prize jewels, his precious hair, and his face. But by the time he landed in the girls' meadow, he was in his birthday suit, literally. He proceeded to run away from his fan club, butt naked. The fangirls got rabid and pulled out cameras, still film cameras, and still digital cameras. One fangirl mysteriously pulled out a large digital video camera from her small bag. Catching Sasuke's forme naturel in the woods came only once in a blue moon. And the fangirls who missed the shirtless Sasuke episode capitalized on the present opportunity. The gossip said that Sasuke was still hiding on the academy training grounds. But unfortunately, his fangirls were on the prowl for a glimpse of naked Sasuke TM. Meanwhile, the male class of Naruto's batch, the ones who didn't care about Sasuke and was not part of the male division of his fan club, were talking amongst themselves. They were at the center of it all. They saw Sakura and Ino's stinking personalities. They were there when Sasuke got hit by the log which sent him flying, and when they heard him cursing Naruto's name. They also produced cameras and were the first to picture Sasuke in his naked, angst-ridden glory. While he was still in the air no less, while the fangirls only got ground shots. The black market will be filled tomorrow with Uchiha Sasuke spy shots, as fangirls got ready with their money. Needless to say they were all laughing their stomachs off as they left the academy. Pumping their fists upward at the red sun, they saluted their resident prankster, now a graduate, in thanks. The ones leading the cheering were unsurprisingly, Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba, and Shino. Hinata and Shino were cheering for Naruto in their minds of course. Even though he wasn't there to witness what they have witnessed, and even though he wasn't the one responsible for the misfortunes of the most irritating and annoying of their classmates, they honored him with one final hurrah. To Naruto. We will never forget you. Good luck out there. And we thank you for today's memories. Hurrah for Naruto. Our resident prankster. May Kami speed your career. Meanwhile, far away from the group, a red and violet blur hightailed it out of the academy. Leaving bodies in their wake. Fainted bodies, that is. On the other side of the academy, a butt-naked Bishounen Avenger hid in the woods. As his fan club patrolled the area en force. For the 3 of them, their day hasn't ended yet. Iruka and Naruto left the office of the Hokage with grins plastered on their faces. With Naruto's being more prominent. A result of his career as prankster, no doubt. It was a true grin, however. It wasn't a grin that didn't reach his eyes. That was a mask for situations he deemed appropriate. But there was no reason to hide now. He had acknowledgement from his precious people. His life will be free from the control of the Council of Elders, and what he will do with said life will no longer be controlled by barmy old coots who were more meddlesome than the Hokage gave them credit for. Konoha, look out. A more confident and mature Naruto is on the prowl. And he won't take shit from villagers anymore, unlike when he did as a young child. After saying goodbye to Mayuri, who ruffled Naruto's hair as he said goodbye, Sensei and Deshi were off for a celebratory dinner at Ichiraku's. They both tried to invite Mayuri, but she declined, saying that there was a lot of work to be done. Her predecessor had left her a backlog of work, in which Naruto berated the last secretary for. She also explained that it wasn't her habit to slack off during the first day of work. Naruto decided to take the advice to heart and mentally noted to ask Mayuri for more tips about hard work. Saying goodbye to her for the second time, they left the administration building. As they were walking, student and sensei talked about the events of the day. Iruka asked Naruto what happened during their team meeting. Naruto then told Iruka about Guy and his teammates. After a few minutes, Naruto had a question. Nah, Iruka-sensei, do you have a copy of my teammates' full info? I'd like to read them if you don't mind me requesting a copy. At this intelligent question, Iruka raised an eyebrow. Why do you need a copy of their dossier? I have one on file of course in my home. I've always kept a personal file of all the students I've taught. Naruto's face was held in thought as they kept walking. Well, I had learned a few things about them when we introduced ourselves in front of Guy Sensei, but I still don't know squat about who they are. So I'm going to need to know them better. I have a feeling that Team 9 will be together for a long time, even after we become Chunin. So I need to learn more about them. And do you have Guy Sensei's info as well? Because I need to know at least what to expect tomorrow on our survival exam. As Naruto finished, he turned his head to look at his sensei. Iruka had a dumbfounded expression on his face. Are you sure you're not sick or hallucinating, Naruto? At his sensei's question, he pouted. Iruka-sensei. The blonde fox whined as his sensei grinned at him. Moo, you're enjoying my suffering, aren't you? Iruka chuckled as he put an arm around his favorite student. Just getting some payback, with you being genin, we won't see each other that often anymore. So for the rest of today until tonight, we're going to spend time together. Just the two of us. Naruto's head hung low, realizing that what Iruka said was true. Naruto visibly brightened again when Iruka said that he would spend time with him. Hantu. We're going to spend the rest of the day together. Iruka nodded in confirmation. Hi, after we eat at Ichiraku's, we'll head over to my house and I'll teach you some things that I know. At the promise of a little bit of personal training with his sensei later, Naruto jumped up and shouted. Yada. Iruka-sensei is going to train me personally. Iruka chuckled as Naruto urged him to go faster towards the direction of Ichiraku's. The Chunin sensei figured that Naruto should have every advantage given to him. The burden of being jailer to Kyuubi no Kitsune no Yaokai, which resulted in almost all the adults and children of Konoha to hate him with a passion, really weighed his blonde student down. And when the Hokages of Konoha acknowledged him as savior, he again realized that Naruto has been protecting Konoha from the day of his birth, and even now as they walk. Being the savior and hero of Konoha will hamper his progress and growth as a ninja and a person. And now that Naruto will be taking his first step as a ninja of the leaf tomorrow, he vowed to himself that at least for tonight, he won't be undertaking a battle unarmed and uninformed. Picking up his stride, he sped up a little to placate his hyperactive student to hurry towards their favorite ramen stand. But during the way there, Naruto paused, pulled out his hanky, and went into a sneezing fit just as he had his nose covered. Rubbing his nose, he sheepishly laughed at his situation, making his sensei chuckle. Gomen, looks like some people are gossiping about me again. Iruka nodded in understanding, and they picked up where they left off in their conversation. As they walked to Ichiraku's, Iruka rubbed the scar on his nose, trying to remember exactly what he needed to tell Naruto that was related to the academy. I guess I'll remember it later. We still have a lot of time left, anyway. Well then, last time we left the annoying trio, Sakura and Ino were doing stinkingly. Oh well, moving on. Sasuke was still on the academy grounds as he avoided his most obsessive, rabid, and devoted fangirls, who were on the prowl to get a glimpse of him en naturel with their video and still cameras. These were, of course, the girls who missed the shirtless episode and the naked in the woods episode. Too bad all of Sasuke's fangirls missed the flying in the air naked while cursing Naruto op and of original pictures and video that was for the black market. The Genin Academy class 105 males who bothered to take those shots will be thousands of Rai richer tomorrow. Wait, last time the author, they all snapped shots. I wonder if Itachi watched the black market as well. Hee. Well, let's end the torment of the annoying three, shall we? Wait, did I just say end their torment? Moo. Oh well, time to bash some other characters anyway. It's time to spread out and focus on different targets. Sakura and Ino, both looking back at the bodies that they left in their wake, just kept running out of the academy. As they neared the residential district, the body count just kept piling up. As they were passing restaurants and other dining establishments serving food, beverages and other types of consumables, the wind picked up. Throwing their unique scents everywhere in their vicinity, the end result was people coming out of said establishments, complaining about the stench and hurling out their dinners, drinks, and whatever they ate or drank. The business district looked like the morning after of Konohagakure's drinking festival, and that the participants were doing one nasty upheaval of their hangovers. But it wasn't morning at that time, and the drinking festival won't be happening for several months. And so, there was an argument between the diners not paying because of the stench and the establishments arguing that it wasn't their fault. Fortunately, a squad of Anbu had witnessed the commotion from a distance and started to chase the person or persons responsible for this. Of course, they all thought that the perpetrator was Naruto, since he's the only one with the guts and knowledge to stage a village-wide prank. The Anbu fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. They then followed the prankster by sight and scent. As they began the chase for Naruto, one Anbu had a confused stare under her mask. Why are they following two stink clouds? Meanwhile up ahead, a group of jounins were walking in the opposite direction of the smelly duo. Kakashi, Kurenai, Asuma, Ibisu, Genma, Raido, Iwashi, Hate, and Aoba had just walked out of the bar that they had dinner in. The tracker of the group was in the back, reading his piece of literature. Aoba and Ibisu were out in front. Genma, Raido, Iwashi, and Hate were talking about jutsu. Asuma was of course, smoking. Kurenai was glaring at Kakashi and his novel. But she'd much prefer to torch the one reading the book, not the book itself. Hey, a woman had issues when porn was in front of them. There was also a rumor on the Jounin grapevine stating that Kakashi had issues with women in commitment and preferred to bed the wilder ones by the dozen rather than take a decent one to a proper date. It turns out that one girl wasn't that discreet when Kakashi picked her up. By the time he woke up and got rid of his hangover, she had blabbed on and on to her friends how good he was in pleasuring his partner, the measurements of his assets and his performance level, which she rated as S-rank to the cage level. Kakashi was then reported to have donned more masks under his mask. As the new surge of fangirls that Kakashi acquired, which included girls as young as 14, hounded the special jounin. He never dated anyone outside of the Chunin and jounin ranks after that incident. Suddenly, Kakashi stiffened, jutting his nose in the air as he smelled Sakura and Ino from afar. Apparently their stink radius had grown twice over the course of their running. "Do you smell something?" the copy ninja said. Deku Hate, who also had a sensitive nose, immediately darted sideways perpendicular to the direction that they were walking to. Hate was heading for the direction of the clean and open air of the forest so that he won't be affected by the smell. Strangers who looked at him and gave him the once-over always concluded three things: 1. That he had a respiratory disease because he's always coughing and looking sick. 2. It won't be long before he kicked the bucket. And 3. He wasn't a very effective ninja because of the first two things. Well, appearances are more than meets the eye, especially when you look at the ninja. He was just suffering a chronic bout of harsh asthma, which started when he was a kid and just wouldn't go away, no matter what cure the medic nins tried on him. And who says he can't kick butt effectively because of it? He actually has Aoba, Ibisu, Genma, Raido, and Iwashi totally owned when they challenge him to spars. His only weakness was that he hated things that smelled bad, rotten, and stinky. And that his girlfriend Yuzuki had him whipped in the sparring department. Hate's eyes flew open wide in surprise, which shifted to mischievous amusement as he saw his fellow jounin drop down like flies. Once again his quick thinking spared him from his colleague's embarrassing fate. He then whipped out a camera as he watched his co-workers taken down by two girls who he judged to be at Ninja Academy age. He chuckled deviously as he snapped blackmail material. He and Yuzuki will be laughing at these pictures tomorrow after he gets them developed. After all, having something to blackmail your peers into doing anything you wanted was always a welcomed advantage. In the ninja world, this was just standard operating procedure, with kickbacks. As the two groups passed each other, Aoba got decked first with the smell and fainted. Ibisu dropped down flat and foamed at the mouth while his head twitched involuntarily. He fainted before the two girls even had a chance to pass him. Genma almost swallowed the larger than average senbon in his mouth. Luckily his gagging reflex reacted as he hurled, which popped it out of his throat. He promptly fainted after that though. Iwashi's goatee literally fell off of his chin as the duo of Ino and Sakura passed him. Apparently his facial hair was sensitive to stench. He was KO'd before he hit the ground. Raido was in the same state. His burn scars were twitching involuntarily in his unconsciousness. Kurenai used Genjutsu on herself to cut off her smelling sense. What she wasn't prepared for was the second wave of stench when she turned it off. She fell to the ground in unconscious bliss, her eyes twitching in anger, surprise, and resentment, even if they were closed. There was only one thing on her mind as she blacked out. What the hell? Kakashi managed to lift his hit I-8 up and tried to stop the girls via Genjutsu hypnosis with his Sharingan. He wasn't expecting to copy jutsus from the two. As the stench saturated his nose, he fell as well, dreaming of Icha scenarios with him as the male character. The unnamed jutsus floated to his mind for later retrieval. Asuma thought he was safe when he jumped to the trees as he saw Aoba fall. It was then that the stench coming from Ino and Sakura, which had an aerial height of 4 meters, reached his branch. Asuma's eyes rolled to the back of his head and fainted from the smell, falling on Kakashi in a very scandalous position. Hayate made sure that he had extra copies of Asuma and Kakashi and pulled out another roll of film before his friends woke up. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Ino and Sakura didn't realize it, but they took down 3 elite jounins and 5 jounins without even trying. And in defeating Hada Kakashi, they unknowingly avenged their dark-haired crush's indignation. Eventually the Anbu squads increased in number as they tracked Naruto all the way to the residential district, which loomed a few meters ahead. All of the Anbu had learned not to underestimate Naruto's pranks. In fact, it was one of the standard protocols to include Naruto's exploits when Anbu inducted new members and had them briefed of their duties. The squads following Naruto were now 5 in number. 20 Anbu were now tracking the unsuspecting Ino and Sakura. One Anbu, a Hyuga, was wondering why they were following two stink clouds instead of one. She recalled her induction to Anbu and had leaned that Naruto did this prank once or thrice during his early days in the academy. Her doubts forced her to activate her Byakugan. With her telescopic sight, she told all the squads that their targets were two girls around academy age. Confused, the captains of the squads asked for their descriptions. The Anbu squad leaders then checked the recent academy roster that they produced from a member of the second squad that decided to follow Naruto. As Ino and Sakura's identities were revealed, the other four squad captains called off their squad's pursuit. Once again, Naruto had duped them. And he wasn't even in on this prank. They all sighed as their egos were taken down a peg as they accepted defeat from the blonde fox. The original Anbu squad, who assigned themselves to the task of following what they thought was Naruto, just chuckled nervously behind their masks. No big matter, they were newly inducted Anbu anyway, they were bound to make a rookie's mistakes. But academy students or not, this act of randomness won't be tolerated. The Anbu squad separated off when their targets did. Their identities were confirmed when each girl entered their homes, causing screams of outrage and indignation from their parents. It was all muffled because of the ones making the noises were covering their noses, not to mention the walls and doors further muffled the voices. Immediately the parents, especially Ino and Sakura's mothers, ushered them into the bathroom to clean the unsavory smells from their daughters. Sakura and Ino were muttering Naruto's name as they went to their respective bathrooms, as their mothers tagged along. When asked why they were muttering Naruto's name, the girl said that it was because of his prank on them that they might get in trouble. The Haruno matron agreed on her daughter's conclusion, but was taken aback at the news that Naruto graduated earlier than her daughter. However, the Yamanaka matron hounded her daughter for information. Naruto was known to be always at the scene when his pranks were triggered, always laughing at the victims. When Ino said that Naruto wasn't at the scene of the crime, her crimes, Ino's mom told her to drop the accusations, as she cannot directly point it to Naruto. Ino's mom then lectured her about using the Yamanaka's advanced logic on her predicament. Mentioning that Naruto had graduated ahead of them and was meeting his jounin instructor that day instead of being in the academy all day long, Ino's mom pointed out that that was her answer if Naruto had pranked her, personally. Ino hung her head after that in shame. At least one mother doesn't think that lowly of Naruto, I think. The sunset on Konoha was as lovely as ever as the day ended. But this day will be remembered in Konoha as Naruto's day of pseudo-pranks because he managed to prank the top 3 students of his batch without him being there at all. After receiving the reports, the Sandaime Hokage laughed heartily and loudly. But that did not stop him from imposing punishments on Uchiha Sasuke for indecent behavior and flashing, and Yamanaka Ino and Haruno Sakura for the village-wide disturbance they created. Speaking of Sasuke, the Ninja Academy fangirls gave up and went home. He managed to get out of the academy unseen under the cover of darkness. But then, when he was at the residential district, heading for his apartment complex, the fangirls that adored him from ages 14 to 20 ambushed him and took pictures of his nakedness. He sighed and hung his head in defeat as he ran away from them, covering his privates. But it didn't deter him to curse his rival. The number 2 person besides Itachi, who had the ability to torment Sasuke, Naruto, Ino, Sakura, and their moms, didn't leave their bathrooms until morning the next day. Sasuke managed to shake off his fangirls by hiding again, but by the next 2 hours, he contracted the common cold and flu from staying outside for prolonged periods, with nothing to wear. Ino and Sakura were in the same predicament from staying in the water for too long. No matter, Sandaime sent notes to all 3 Ninja Academy students. Their punishment was a week of suspension from the academy. Also, 3 Kenjutsus were created that day: Haruno Sakura's Stinky no Jutsu, Yamanaka Ino's Smelly no Jutsu, and Uchiha Sasuke's version of Naruto's anti-pervert technique, which targeted girls. Sexy no Jutsu. Sasukepoi Sexy no Jutsu. Sasuke style. Sandaime Hokage-sama had a wicked grin as he added a footnote, inspired by Uzumaki Naruto. The author writes that justice has finally been served. He had pawned Naruto's main tormentors in the academy thoroughly. In writing this, he hopes that this chapter will be the last appearance of the annoying trio in his fan fiction, as he writes further chapters. He hopes that he will not write about them any more than necessary, and that if they should appear again, a year would have passed in Naruto's training, along with Guy's Team 9. Or if he were to write about them, it would only be in snippets of scenes, or brief visits. Naruto and Iruka swapped tales as they walked towards Iruka's house. Naruto had been there several times in his academy days. The Chunin always found the blonde on his doorstep when the villagers get overbearing and lash out at him personally in more violent ways, since they found out that they couldn't step inside Naruto's house anymore to trash the place, as it was barred from them using advanced locks, which they couldn't find a way to undo. In a way, Iruka was very happy that Naruto wasn't coming over for the usual reasons. He watched his student as he walked beside him. A little sad that his student had taken a step closer to his dream, but at the same time happy, as a parent would when his child achieved something great. Naruto meanwhile, had feelings of sadness and happiness as well. He was happy that people acknowledged him, despite what he has under his navel, especially his Iruka sensei. But he was equally sad, because that one of the first people who acknowledged him won't be there when he achieves something, either in his training or in his missions. But as he walked, he realized that whatever he does, whether it bad or good things, Iruka will always be there for him, albeit in spirit. With extra ramen in tow, he let his thoughts wander as he followed his sensei to his home. Upon entering the home of his sensei, Naruto observed how the house hasn't changed a bit in the last times he visited. The standard couch, coffee table, and television were in the living room. A wall separated it from the kitchen and 2 bedrooms. As he looked around the room, he noticed something odd hanging from one of the racks. "Iruka-sensei, what is that thing over there?" Upon removing his shoes from the entrance of the apartment, Iruka looked at the thing Naruto was pointing at. "Oh, that thing. It's called a guitar. It's one of the relics of the old world." Iruka explained as he approached the guitar and lifted it off from where it hung. The guitar was polished in regular colors, the sides were polished a deep black with white trim around the edges. The front of the guitar was light yellow in color, bordering brown and orange like polished and cut wood. The neck was of regular length, 6 metal strings, which Naruto observed were a lot thicker than the metal strings other ninja use, were placed along the neck of the guitar. The guitar strings were placed from the topmost part of the neck to the mid-bottom portion of the body. As he examined the guitar, Naruto gave it a wicked grin. The main part resembles the bodies of some of the daimyo's wives. Iruka just chuckled and nodded to the blonde fox's comparison. "Yes, they look quite the same, but don't tell that I agreed with you, okay? It's our secret." Naruto just nodded as he sported a wicked grin at his sensei, who was mirroring his own grin. The question came up on Naruto's head as he was sharing grins with Iruka. "Well, what does it do? Is it a weapon? Is it used in some kind of special jutsu that you use?" Iruka shook his head at the questions Naruto threw at him. "It isn't a weapon, Naruto, and I don't use it in conjunction with a jutsu. Its true purpose, for me that is to create music." Iruka explained as he strummed at the guitar, playing a piece of music familiar to him. As Naruto sat, entranced at Iruka's movements on the guitar, he realizes that this was a side of his sensei that was hidden from the rest of the world, a softer, more sensitive Iruka, who was in tune with his life and of the lives of others. As the song finished, Naruto was in awe at the music that Iruka played for him, clapping at his sensei's performance. "Sugoi, Iruka-sensei, that was awesome." Iruka just waved his hand in dismissal of Naruto's praise. Saying that he wasn't one of the best players, he then told Naruto how he had come across the relic. "I was on a mission near Kusagakure when I came by a stall that were selling several of these. The owner of the stall told me a little history of the instrument and how it was lost eons ago with the advent of the demons and the last war of the world. He also gave me a booklet on how to learn the guitar, and he also sells other instruments. He recommended the guitar to me because it was easy to learn if you have the time. That was the time after your last visit, I think, which was 3 years ago. I've been making music for some time now. If you'll visit from time to time, maybe I can play some of it for you. Playing this instrument also makes me relax." Naruto nodded as he looked at the guitar. "I guess it helps you relieve the stress from the academy, the blonde genin to be concluded." Iruka nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, sometimes when the work burden, the kids, and you become stressfully hard to overcome, I play. It's a change from all the missions, the lessons for the academy, and the general pressure from the shinobi career." As Naruto examined the guitar once again, he asked Iruka if he could teach him to play the guitar. Iruka nodded, but said that Naruto would have to buy his own guitar so that they can play at the same time. After asking how much the guitar was when the Chunin bought it 3 years ago, Naruto found that such an investment would be more beneficial in the long run. After a few moments of conversations, Iruka went to his file cabinet to photocopy the dossiers of Tenten, Lee, Niji, and Guy. Naruto continued to examine the guitar while his sensei was away. After a few minutes, the two set off again for the training grounds that were deserted at nighttime. As they stepped out into the moonlit night, Naruto didn't notice the backpack hanging off of Iruka's shoulders. Meanwhile in the Hokage tower, Sarutobi was looking in on the conversations of Iruka and Naruto, satisfied that the prophecy and the fact that Naruto was the savior of Konoha wasn't being discussed as one of their topics. He turned the jutsu off on his crystal ball and proceeded to clean up the draft of Naruto and his status change in Konoha. The Council of Elders will have no choice but to give up their hold on him once they read Yondame's will. He will then present to the council the level of secrecy decree concerning Naruto. He then can act freely on what Naruto's training will be like in the next year or so. A well-written letter to one of his students, who was now making his living by using his perversion and his eloquence in writing literature, had just been sent this afternoon regarding the discovery of his student's last will and what it contains. Sandaime was counting on the fact that Jiraiya had gotten over his mourning over the death of Yondaime and that he was willing to take on another apprentice because of Yondaime's will. Smiling at the thought of seeing the idiot of the three amongst his students and maybe getting another unreleased copy of his work before it gets published, he proceeded to ride on well into the night as warpath. If the council does not agree to his ideas, then they better look for his replacement this early on. For he will no longer tolerate no as an answer. Naruto dodged to the left as he parried Iruka's strike. Sensei and student have been practicing in one of the deserted training fields nearest Iruka's house. Iruka was instructing Naruto on the basics of fighting with a combat knife, or a tanto. There was no time to retrain Naruto in basic Doujutsu, as the Genin survival exam was just hours away. The best Iruka can do for Naruto is to give him instruction in basic knife fighting. One of Iruka's gifts to Naruto included a titanium combat knife and a tanto. Both were carbon black in color, so that no light will reflect on the surfaces. The blades were also engraved with a dark orange tip-tailed fox with red fur. Flaming 9 tails were wrapped around the blade. Naruto was blinking held back tears as he examined the blades Iruka gave him. Seeming to be a blessing as Naruto begun his career as a ninja, and acceptance and forgiveness for what he has under his navel. Said tanto was now hanging in front of Naruto's kunai holster on his right thigh, while the combat knife was strategically placed on Naruto's waist, the holster molded within the belt that now hung above on Naruto's upper waist, along with 2 pairs of new shuriken and kunai holsters. Iruka also presented Naruto with brand new kunai and shuriken, of course. Iruka also gave him the location of the best weapons shop in Konoha, who made quality weapons at lower prices than the competition. Iruka was enjoying the spar between him and his most excellent student. He had always known that Naruto was a fast learner if he applied himself to what he was learning. That was what separated him from his other students, who were either called geniuses or prodigies. He had also known what Naruto had to go through during the years in the academy that he wasn't present for. The neglect was rolling off Naruto in waves when he became his homeroom sensei. It was no secret in the academy that most of the senseis there hated him, especially the ones who were genin when the Kyuubi killed their parents. Iruka had sometimes wondered if Naruto would have graduated without his help. When he recalled that Naruto graduated on his own determination, he just grinned mentally. As he brought himself to reality again, he noticed that Naruto was keeping up with his autonomic moves as he parried attacks again and again. He then called a halt to their spar and sat down on the grass. Naruto's face was a grin from ear to ear. Iruka chuckled as he identified with the face. In his genin days, he always wore the same grin when their sensei showed them a new jutsu. All of his childhood exuberance ended though when he made his first kills as a ninja. As he went through life and coped after those first kills and field experience first as a genin and later in life as a chunin, he wrote a small book with his memos. In time it had become a moderately thick book. He was now just picking a time to get it published. Naruto dropped from a sitting position to a lying position. He then looked at the stars up above the night sky. I wonder if there are other ninjas among the stars and what jutsus they create that are so different from ours. Once again, Iruka chuckled at his innocence. And proceeded to narrate the past history of their world. Some people say that we are the only living things in the universe, Naruto. Ancient history chronicles that thousands of years ago, countries made a bid to conquer the stars themselves and planned to make contact with beings outside this planet of our solar system, as the past scientists call our world and the surrounding planets, along with the sun. The governments all around the world launched space expeditions and had left communication devices to act as our messengers to other civilizations. The governments hoped that these devices would bridge our wishes to communicate with other civilizations that are more advanced than ours. But then, war broke out among the most powerful countries and the ancient world was plunged in what would be called as the last war of that century. Since other nations can counter the conventional weapons that some countries unleash at them, and so the war turned inward to the human capabilities of the soldiers, and eventually all the countries turned to the science that we call genetics. All of the nations then surged ahead and produced modified soldiers that can adapt to any situation and environment. And so the war turned to the front lines once more. It was called the Gene Wars back then. Some say that it was the foundation of what is to be called today as the bloodline limits. And then the time came that nations used the ultimate evil of weapons. The Yokai Wars were started when a nation summoned minor demons and beasts to fight the war for them. After the first wave of demonic destruction and chaos, all the nations turned to the unnatural and unholy abilities these demons wielded. And thus the advent of the Demon Wars came to be called the longest and most destructive war of all time, killing billions of humans and destroying the known world, decimating large cities and the vast knowledge they contain. As well as the most advanced technologies that they held. It is the reason that most of the technologies and how they were used became lost as the demons ravaged the planet itself. At the height of the wars, the tailed beasts like the Kyuubi no Kitsune no Yokai and other tailed demons, the fiercest and the strongest of them all, were drawn into this world. As the tailed beasts fought amongst each other, cities were gone in a night, mountains collapsed, rivers trickled dry, forests burned to embers, and the continents drifted in together to form a new world map. The tidal wave of this new war plunged our already crumbling world into darkness at its climax, which lasted thousands of years. The technologies and advancements we have come to rely upon were now lost. But once again, human nature and the indomitable spirit that we have carried to the beginning of our species until now, found a way to survive. Our humanity saved us from the brink of extinction. The yokai that were still around taught us how to use their energies, thus chakra was born. The capability to fight against the yokai was more apparent in the people that the yokai touched, befriended, or in some instances, had mates with. Thus the bloodline and bloodline limit clans were born. But their strengths and the newfound way to manipulate the energies which the demons were using themselves, the humans fought back and drove some of the yokai to extinction. Some yokai were sealed like your tenant, or the yokai fought amongst themselves and killed each other. Iruka turned to look at his student and looked at the stars himself. And now, here we are, several thousand years when the yokai were driven back, and several hundred years later after the formation of the hidden villages, we still encounter some of the yokai that are still loose out there, and that some of the hidden villages, like Kumagakure and Iwagakure, are hostile with our village. Thus we are at an impasse situation with some of them. But with the Chunin exams held biannually in the allied countries, the chances of all-out war have been reduced. The technologies that were lost are still being unearthed and rediscovered as time goes on. The only difference is that we are able to draw the power that yokai once called theirs. Even if it's just a simple version of it. Iruka finished as he looked at his student, who was on his side and listening to him with rapt attention. Naruto then nodded and smiled at the small history lesson. Iruka-sensei. If you had summarized the history of our world like that in our lessons, we would have finished with world history a long time ago. The blonde ninja stood up while brushing off grass and leaves on his clothes. That was when he received a bop in the head. He rubbed his head as he smiled cheekily at his sensei, who was now looking at him with disapproval. Shaking his head, Iruka told Naruto that the break was over. It was now nearing 8 in the evening, and he still had much to teach his blonde student. A few hours later, it was nearing 11 p.m. when Iruka ended their training session. Iruka toted a backpack while they were traveling. Naruto hasn't seen the backpack before, so he figured that it was for carrying Iruka's ninja tools and such. At the crossroads where they agreed to separate, Iruka slipped the backpack off his shoulders and handed it to him. At his questioning glance, Iruka explained what the backpack was and what it contained. Remember the night when you kicked Mizuki's butt? Naruto's face lit up in a grin as he recollected what happened that night. He nodded after that. You asked me for some things that will help you on your training, right? Well, all of what you asked is in this backpack. I've also added some things that you didn't mention to include. I think all of the things inside there will greatly help your training. Iruka then asked Naruto to turn around. He then slipped the backpack on his student's shoulders from behind. Iruka fought his brimming tears as he realized the significance of what he was doing. The fact that I am giving this backpack to him means that I am accepting that he is no longer my student anymore. As he adjusted the straps of the backpack, Iruka turned Naruto around, kneeled, and hugged him. Tears spilled in his eyes as he fought back sobs. Hey, be careful out there, okay? Don't be arrogant and loud. Always think before you do something or take up an action or come to a decision that may be irreversible, or you may wind up dead before you become Hokage. That would be pretty stupid to do, you know. At Naruto's silent nod, he continued. The things I gave to you really made a dent in my savings account, so I won't be treating you to Ichiraku for several months. Again, Naruto nodded in understanding. If you're not sure about something, need a sparring partner, or if you just need someone to talk to, just visit me at home or at the academy, and we'll see what we can do. Iruka wiped his tears with his sleeve as he broke the hug and stood up. He just laughed as he saw tears streaming down his student's cheeks. You've been crying. He snorted a laugh at his student. Naruto pointed it back at him, along with a sad pout. Well, you've been crying too. At this point Sensei and Deshi burst out in laughter, which died down as fast as the tears did. In a spur-of-the-moment decision, Naruto walked up to his sensei and hugged his waist. I promise I'll be careful, can't be Hokage if I'm dead, can I? The next time we meet I'm going to be the one treating you to Ichiraku. And expect me to kick your butt when I need you as a sparring partner. Naruto smiled as he broke the hug. Waving farewell to his sensei in silence, he turned around and ran to the direction of his house. Iruka watched his soon-to-be former student's progress as his form vanished into the night. Walking in the direction of his own apartment, he brushed an errant tear off his eye. Naruto, be careful out there. You're like the son I never had. I don't know what I'd do if I lost you. Unknown to Iruka, Naruto was musing the same thing in his mind at the moment as he ran to his apartment. You're like the father I didn't have the time to know before he died. Iruka-sensei, I promise to apply everything you taught me in my career as a ninja. If there's one person I need to become Hokage for, it would be you. Meanwhile inside Naruto's mind, 4 humanoid figures began to materialize in the recesses of Naruto's subconscious. The imprints of the Hokages of Konoha began to restructure themselves at the edge of Naruto's subconscious. As the Hokages' forms finally stabilized, they each fanned out and looked at Naruto's mind and the state of neglect, abuse, hate, and coldness that it had endured in 11 years. The Yondaime was feeling extra guilty as he examined the dark, dank, sewer-like state that Naruto's subconscious was in. According to a research that he had done while still alive, only people who were battle-hardened or had serious mind disorders had this kind of subconscious. How does he handle it all? This mind has been suffering for so long, I'm certain that it's only a matter of time before it cracks. Shadaime was nodding at the fourth's findings. Being close to the founders of the Yamanaka clan, he has seen mind states that were like this, but not to the extent of what Naruto's mind is suffering. Yes, Naruto's current state of mind is rather unstable right now, but with more people being friends with him and acknowledging him, his mind won't look like this for long. All he needs is more friends and more encouragement. Sandaime rubbed his chin as he examined the dark passages of Naruto's memories. With his peers, he was a calm, comforting presence, but inside the war mask that he gave to his subordinates, he was seething at his real self. How could Sarukan allow this? I believe that my real self is planning something to change that, we just need more time to plan out Naruto's ascension as the true savior of Konoha. For now, all we can do is strengthen and improve his mind so that the Kyuubi cannot exploit his vulnerabilities. Yondaime is accurate about his conclusion on Naruto's mind as whole. I am going to have some really nasty things to say to my old self when next we meet. Once again, the professor's words and opinions were accepted by the group. As they converged together, Nidaime asked the Yondaime a question. Is Naruto your real son and heir apparent? The others were looking at him for an answer as well. Including Imprint Sandaime, feeling that he was cornered, Yondaime shook his head. I do not know for sure if he is my son. When I got to the hospital, I immediately rushed to the ward where the newborn babies were being cleaned. There was only one babe who was born that night. Without looking at the name tag on the baby's wrist, I whisked him off from the nurse's arms, took off the name tag, immediately summoned Gamabunta, and headed off to the location where our shinobi were fighting the Kyuubi. Yondaime took a deep breath and continued. You all know what happened next. After sealing Kyuubi in Naruto's navel, I died. As an imprint, I have no recollection of what has happened after I sealed Kyuubi. I am like you in mind state, we are only the last thoughts and wishes of the Hokages that we portray. That we are only a way of storing information inside the scroll of seals, and that we have almost all the memories of our real selves. But for now, we will just have to wait for Sandaime's updates on the scroll of seals. Yondaime finally finished his explanation to the others, who just nodded in assent to his explanation. Nidaime once again joined the conversation. I believe this is the appropriate time to check up on Naruto's tenant. This is also a test to see if Iniki still has his Bijuu controlling abilities, even though he is just an imprint. It is also a test to see if Iniki's Bijuu control has been passed down to Naruto as well. As Nidaime finished, Yondaime added a suggestion. I think we should wait until next night. If I remember correctly, Naruto needs his sleep, as he has to take the Genin survival exams tomorrow. We will have to wait before we can bring him here. So that tenant and landlord can finally see each other, face to face. The Hokages agreed as their forms dissipated again. Inside the Kyuubi's cage, the nine-tailed Yokai was anticipating the arrival of his jailer. For the demon, it did not matter if the one who kept him inside these bars were accompanied by the mere imprints of the past. What mattered right now were his plans for the future and the time when he is freed from this cage that the yellow-haired rat put him in 11 years ago. After he was free, he will again hunt down the treacherous being who put him and his loved ones in this predicament. Naruto opened the door to his apartment with a special key that he kept in a chain around his neck. It was the only reminder that he has owned anything in this world. He had found out long ago that Sandaime was the one paying the rent of the apartment, as well as the water, gas, and electricity bills. He also has a monthly allowance, given by the Sandaime himself. He was thankful that the third was looking out for him, despite the whole village treating him lower than the dirt under their toenails. 10 years of his memories were spent here, especially when the orphanage kicked him out at the age of 1 year and 3 months. Stepping inside the threshold of his room, he announced his presence. Tadaima, he said sadly, as he lived alone, he had no one to go home to, no family, no mother to greet his arrival with a warm meal and an even warmer and kind smile, no siblings to exuberantly greet him as he took off his shoes, and no father to ask how he was progressing at the academy. Such was the life of an orphan, never knowing who your real parents were, if you had siblings or cousins or any relation somewhere. He even envied his rival Sasuke, as he had parents before some Itachi person killed off the whole Uchiha clan. The absence of relations was more heartfelt when there were activities in the academy that included someone related to you. To Naruto, the pain was more acute when his birthday or other holidays came up. As Naruto shook off his sadness, he sat up from the entrance and turned on the lights. He then entered his apartment. Dropping the backpack off his bedroom, he proceeded to clean his somewhat messy living room. Because Naruto had the whole village hating his guts, he hasn't had a visitor since he moved in when he was only 1 year and 3 months, except for the occasional irate villagers who trashed his apartment when he had just started living there to drive him out of the village. So it was perfectly normal for him to find his apartment in a mess. But now that he was going to be a genin, he needed to shape up his house, for he would never know when his teammates or sensei would visit him. After the cleansing of his living room, he decided that it was enough work for the night and headed off to the shower for a quick bath and to brush his teeth. As he dried off, he headed for his bedroom, which was a little messier than the living room. With laundry basket in hand, he proceeded to at least clean his room of stray and dirty clothing, which he had always neglected to pick up until the last minute when he did his laundry. Seeing as the basket was almost full, he reminded himself to do laundry as soon as possible. Dumping his laundry basket in the small laundry room, along with the towel that he used for the shower, he padded back to his room in his boxers. Buttoning up his pajamas, he spied the backpack that Iruka gave him. Looking at the time on his alarm clock, he proceeded to examine its contents. Opening the zipper, he spied a scroll of above average size, with a note tied in its seal strings, along with rolled up papers containing the dossiers of his teammates. Naruto then read the attached note on the scroll. Naruto, congratulations on becoming a graduate. This scroll and the contents on this backpack are filled with training tools and aids with you in mind. This big scroll contains scrolls with ninjutsu, taijutsu, and jinjutsu of basic genin level. It also contains a scroll with chakra control exercises on them, from genin to jounin. Example is the academy level leaf control exercise. I also have some basic elemental jutsu scrolls in here, like Suiten, Mizukunai no Jutsu. Some practical jutsus for everyday use like the quick drawing jutsu and regular non-elemental offensive jutsus like Kage Shuriken and Kage Kunai no Jutsu. I also gave you 10 pairs of clothes in stealth colors that you can mix and match. I've also provided a scroll to contain them. I know about the irate villagers who vandalize your apartment from time to time, so this is a good solution. Remember the belt I gave you along with the knife. If you take it off, you'll find that there are seals on the holster of the knife. Just press the different seals and see what happens. But that would be for later. I have also added some books and scrolls for you to read and learn. Now, don't make that face, Naruto. The Taikai and meditation books will help you greatly. Trust me on this, please. I've never taught you anything that you can't apply on in life. Haven't I? I have also put 2 scrolls on the bottom of the bag. These scrolls contain a Kadachi and a ninja too. These are for when you master the knife and tanto forms I have included on a scroll in the large scroll. Remember that there are no shortcuts to hard work and perseverance, so I want you to master the tanto and the knife forms of fighting, as wielding swords of greater length are taxing to the body. So I just want you to practice with the tanto and knife until you're proficient enough to bring down someone twice your size with them. I have also given you gravity weight bands. What are they, you ask? They are just bands with seals written on them in permanent ink. Activating them will increase the weight and increase the gravity in that part of the body. Unlike training weights, which you can only put in specific parts of your body, weight bands can be easily put on or off in areas of the body that get neglected. That way you can fully train the whole body. You can also use training weights in conjunction with the weight bands, as the weight bands can be configured to sink under your skin so as to not get in the way with your everyday activities. The weight bands are our secret, by the way. Do not, I repeat. Do not tell anyone that you are wearing gravity weight bands. Okay. Well then, I hope that when I see you next, you'd have grown more as a ninja. Good luck on your career. And remember, don't go running into something that you can't get out of. And don't take any crap from anyone starting tonight. And don't listen to people that will say that you are weak or a waste of training space and time. You're my most excellent student. Always remember that, okay? You're the only one amongst the countless students that I have taught to ever receive a title from me, so live up to the title that I gave you. Your Shinobi Gakuen Sensei, Iruka. P.S. About the Genin survival exam, well, it isn't fair for your batchmates that are still here in the academy if I easily gave you the exact answer to pass the exam. I know that you know about the Genin survival exam already, but I'm not really sorry that I did not give you any warning as to what it was. But as my favorite student and a close friend of mine, I want you to pass the exam. So I'll just give you some clues. The whole does not function without its parts, it also cannot function with just one part. There's no I in the word team, Gambit. Drawing of a chibi Iruka with a speech bubble Gambit. Written in bright orange kanji seen here. Naruto smiled as he read Iruka's letter over and over again, brushing an errant tear out of his eye as he hugged it to his chest. His resolve for passing the survival exams and making one of his precious people proud loomed in his mind. But before he resolved to sleep, he decided to finally read the Forbidden Bloodline scroll. Lifting up his pajama shirt, he uncovered the container seal on his heart. Sandaime had put it in there as a storage seal for the forbidden bloodline scroll. Drawing a small amount of blood. He spread it over the seal and did a minor summon. The scroll then materialized in his bed. Naruto opened the blood seal on the scroll with just a drop of blood and started to read. Welcome, savior of Konoha, and possibly the world, to an exclusive club that is more rare than even the rank of any Kage of the 5 shinobi countries. This scroll details the abilities of the 3 Doujutsu. It also states why acquiring these Doujutsu as one bloodline was deemed forbidden. And why only the savior of Konoha and the world is permitted to have such bloodline Doujutsus in one person or body. It also details the initial tasks for the blood ritual the savior must undergo if he were to receive the forbidden bloodline. But first, here are the abilities of the 3 Doujutsu, in no particular order. Kurigan, a bloodline Doujutsu especially made for the aspect of ninjutsu. The black eyes focus more power into ninjutsu when it is cast with less chakra costs, making it better and more formidable. Unlike the Sharingan of the Uchiha, which only copies ninjutsu and stores it in the part of the brain where it is easily retrievable. Although it cannot copy jutsus, the Kurigan forces its wielder to look at the deeper aspects of the ninjutsu, which he or she is studying or watching. Better understanding of the ninjutsu results in a better execution of the technique at the moment the Kurigan wielder calls for it. With the Kurigan, its wielder will have a better understanding of ninjutsu, as well as forming ideas for the improvement of ninjutsu that he has already mastered, or the formation of a new ninjutsu. It was reported that some of the greatest ninjutsu ever created came from the theories and insights of Kurigan wielders. Akugan, a bloodline Doujutsu especially made for the aspect of Jinjutsu. The red eyes help the wielder to set up a Jinjutsu in half the time it normally takes. Since Jinjutsu users are intelligent already, it simply builds on the wielder's imagination to create more powerful Jinjutsu, which can fool 2 or more of the 5 major senses of the body. With time and training, the wielder of Akugan will study and create more powerful Jinjutsu that takes only a short time to set. As well as the creation of Jinjutsu which other Doujutsu users cannot break. The Sharingan can't see through Jinjutsu, while the Byakugan disables a Jinjutsu completely. But if faced with a high-leveled user of the Akugan, they will be hard-pressed to dispel the Jinjutsu its wielder casts, because the Jinjutsu an Akugan wielder casts can be equal to a blood-limited or blood-limit-created Jinjutsu. Full mastery of the Akugan means that you can create a Jinjutsu that can fool all 5 senses of the body, including the 6th sense. Making its wielder very deadly indeed. Again, some say this Doujutsu came from the eyes of a god. Some say that the god of war, Mars, wielded these eyes himself. This bloodline Doujutsu is also sometimes called the eyes of war. The Agan can prove its worth in battle. These eyes bestow upon its wielder the gift of double training. Any effort to strengthen the body, whether physical, mental, spiritual or any other aspect, will result in greater benefits for the Agan user, whether it is active or not, as the Agan supports the physical aspects of the body and its growth. Using the Agan in battle will keep your body in a relaxed and calm state, letting you think and plan your movements as you fight, therefore minimizing the damage you will receive in battle. The Agan also raises your fighting spirit and stamina reserves by 10% in its starting level. Full mastery of the Doujutsu results in an increase of 50 to 80% in chakra reserves, depending on the user. You will also learn how to masterfully wield a weapon in half the time it takes to learn to wield it and master it, as Doujutsu also includes physical weapons. Fully mastering Agan makes its wielder into a soldier who can walk into an existing skirmish and walk back out with 3/4 of the enemy force decimated while receiving little to minimal damage to the user. As stated at the beginning, these bloodline Doujutsu are so powerful that it was forbidden to acquire it as one bloodline limit. Apparently the 3 Doujutsu becomes limited in form and power because of interbreeding between the tribes of Aka, Kuro and Aoi. The history of the 3 Doujutsu states that these Doujutsu once came from the most powerful yokai that entered the planet via a summoning ritual. These records are thousands of years old, as it chronicles the dark ages of human history, after the Yokai Wars plunged the world in a state of darkness and chaos, where the Yokai ran freely on the world, and the humans they terrorized were mere playthings and food in their view. Although some Yokai would disagree with that notion, Ayubi no Kitsune no Yokai came into this world, bringing forth chaos and destruction. Its eyes were the foundation of Akugan and the human Aka tribe who used illusions for defense. The Aka tribe was moderate in population, as the mates the 9-tailed fox chose to bring forth Hanyu were few and far between. The more peaceful Nana Kami no Kuro, the 7-tailed black wolf, had more difficulty finding mates. The Kuro tribe was formed after the Aka tribe. Some of the Akami's most talented offspring had turned to manipulating nature. Lightning, earth, wind, water and fire were just some of the elements that the Kuro tribe controlled. As such they faced no competition from other Hanyu clans. But the Kuro tribe preferred to share their abilities with other people who were outside the tribe, especially with the Aka and Aoi tribes, which the 7-tailed wolf approved. The lesser-tailed Yokai with 6 tails completed the trio of powerful Yokai that had tribes of their own. The Rakubi no Tora no Aoi was the most prolific amongst the 3 Yokai. The 6-tailed blue tiger demon was the strongest among the 3 in a physical sense. The Aoi tribe that the tiger formed after the Yaokai's first Hanyu was born held the triple balance in check. But the tribes and Yokai, the governing rule of demons and Hanyu, were settled and unchallenged for thousands of years. There were also lesser Hanyu tribes and communities that had other Doujutsu colors. But in time they grew scarce and their line died out, only to reappear again as their Yokai interbred again with humans. Eventually the color of eyes became diverse in 100 years, but scarce the next 100. Only the red, blue, and black tribes and their Hanyu remained intact and well. The 3 tribes also recognized a powerful tribe outside of their alliance because of their unique wide eyes. The wide eyes were stated to have come from a demon falcon, hawk, or eagle with 4 tails. After 200 more years, the non-Doujutsu bloodline limit clans were formed because there were blood limits that focused on other parts of the body instead of the eyes. A blood limit is very much unlike a regular bloodline. The difference is that there was limitations imposed either physically or genetically in said bloodline. Hence the added word limit, because more bloodlines became more focused on an aspect inside or outside of the body and limited the clans to that ability. One day the White tribe's ruling family produced an offspring with onyx eyes. They found out that their abilities did not breed true to this offspring, and the White tribe, turning proud and arrogant as the years passed by, disowned the child and his inferiority, but it was recorded that the child wasn't banished from the tribe, as it was the mother's request that he stayed. The status of an outcast, though, did not deter the child to develop his own power. In an inquiry about the child, it turned out that the ruling family had come in contact with some members of the Aka, Aoi and Kuro tribes Hanyu 8 months before the offspring was to be born. The contact alone was enough, as it seems. For when the child matured, the blood-red eyes with black tomo appeared in his pupils. The child, now a man, had a level of proficiency of both the Aoi and Kuro tribes' abilities, as well as to seemingly counter the abilities of the Aka tribe. But this seemingly new eyes did not achieve the full powers of the tribes that the ruling family had contacted with. The newly spawned Doujutsu was recognized by the 3 major Yokai tribes as another bloodline limit Doujutsu. Eventually, more offspring bearing the new eyes appeared within the White tribe, which the tribe perceived as a plague or disease that threatened their superiority and the future of their tribe. Eventually the tribe underwent cleansing to get rid of the chaos the new eyes would bring to their internal government. As the last member of this new tribe drew his last breath, he promised that his descendants would come like a wave and disrupt the life and ruling of the White with their call of rebellion and freedom. As this was happening, the 3 major tribes still balanced each other in power and strength. 1,000 years more passed and a mysterious person challenged the tribes with extinction. Incidentally, the 3 Yokai had left their tribes to fend for themselves, as they were more structured and organized than the lesser tribes out there. Eventually this mysterious person began a study of the abilities of the 3 Doujutsu, and his power-hungry quest began. He proceeded to make a forbidden jutsu and transferred the essence of the Kurigan to his own eyes after killing off the whole Kuro tribe, who had been nothing but hospitable and tolerant with him. His next conquest was the Agan. Although the Aoi tribe resisted en masse, they were outmatched by the person's intimate knowledge of the Kurigan's full abilities. The last one who died in Aoi was the leader and the oldest one who had the Agan. After obtaining the essence of the Agan and the Kurigan, he proceeded to torment the Akagan tribe. The Kyuubi elected 9 guardians of the Red tribe to act as his tails before he left. The Akagan users held and repelled the mysterious person responsible for unbalancing the 3 tribes. But at the 8th battle, the Akagan 9 crumbled and the Akagan was acquired. The genocide of the 3 tribes was now complete, which did not escape the knowledge of the 3 Yokai who founded them. After the tribes of Kuro, Aka, and Aoi were wiped out, the now dubbed Goshijin Sama no Akuma confronted the ire of the Yokai that built the balanced power of 3 Doujutsu, along with the souls of the human and Hanyu tribes and communities that they had invested in for thousands of years. The master of demons fought the ones who indirectly blessed him with his own powers in a bloody display of combat that left the lesser Hanyu, Yaokais, and some humans who watched from afar, shaking to the core of their heart and soul. It was not a battle for the faint-hearted. In the battle against the 3 Yokai, the power-hungry destroyer held his own in terms of ability, skill, wit, and cunning. But as a mere frail human, he lost a battle of attrition that the Yokai, especially the Kyuubi, thrived in. As the 3 Yokai stripped him of the eyes, tortured, mutilated, and killed his body, he vowed that even if he couldn't go back to this realm, he would find a way to make everyone and everything in this planet suffer a hellish existence. The Yokai then sent his soul to the Void Realm via a special demonic banishment technique. This is where the tale of the forbidden bloodline Doujutsu pauses for the moment. All other details will be revealed in subsequent readings of this scroll. However, the window for the bloodline ritual begins here. For now, you must complete 3 tasks prior to undergoing the ritual. The first 3 tasks the savior needs to do is reading the scroll for the tasks he needed to do. Naruto began to memorize it as he reread the task several more times to ensure he does not make any mistakes, but just to make sure, he wrote the tasks on a separate scroll with his secret script. Resealing the scroll, he cancels the summoning via a seal outside the scroll, making it disappear in existence. He then went back to examining the other contents of the backpack Iruka gave him and secured it in his secret room. The blonde ninja finally succumbed to his weariness and fell asleep with a wide grin on his face after he set his alarm clock, of course. Next morning, the loud blare of the alarm clock signaled the onset of morning. Naruto sat up from his bed, a little more bleary-eyed than usual. Fully waking up was accomplished when his feet touched the cold floor. He then glanced at the time, there was an hour to go before he was due to go to training grounds 9. Naruto then recalled the first team meeting with Guy Sensei and his last words before he left them after the meeting. "And don't bother to eat breakfast, because I cannot guarantee that it will stay in your passionate stomachs." Naruto chuckled at his soon-to-be sensei's speech and contemplated whether or not to eat breakfast. Having still not made up his mind, he figured that it would be better to multitask and think while he was in the shower. Shedding his pajamas and nightcap, he made a side trip to the laundry room. Retrieving the towel that he used last night for his morning shower. Clad in his raiment boxers, he proceeded to have an invigorating bath. After stepping out of the bathroom, he padded over to his closet while he dried his hair and body. He opened his closet halfway and plucked a pair of pants, muscle shirt, and a vest in the same style that he wore yesterday. But instead of red, this pair's color was midnight black, the vest's color was also black. Naruto figured that he might need the stealth factor today in the test. He also used black fighting bandages instead of the sky blue ones that he used yesterday, but he hesitated to put it on, deciding to bandage later. He searched for his ninja gear. Strapping his gear on the right places, he then walked over to his secret room. They say that in the old days, a ninja's house had secret entrances and exits that assured the owner that his escape was guaranteed if his true identity were to be ever found out. Naruto's secret room was a little bit different. The room had a door which connected to a passageway that he followed one day to investigate where it led. He discovered it 6 months after he moved into the apartment. It just led him to a door that was locked from the other side and was barricaded. After his curiosity was satisfied, he never felt the need to explore the tunnel anymore. After some irate villagers broke into his apartment and trashed it several times in order to drive him out of the village, Naruto decided to build his secret room. He then hid his most valuable things in the room that he himself renovated, painted, and rebuilt with his own hands. Sandaime also helped him by pointing him to the house of an old locksmith who took up the job after he retired as a jounin. The locksmith had no grudges with Naruto, as his loved ones had long since died before Kyuubi attacked the village. The locksmith, feeling that his life was waning, lessoned 4-year-old Naruto on basic sealing techniques, which the jounin then invented into the profession of lock sealing. The result of this was that Naruto was familiar with basic, mid-level and advanced seals, and he could now invent powerful locking techniques. The locksmith told Naruto not to use his teachings for mischief and illegal purposes. He then made Naruto to take a ninja's oath, which at the time was a very serious promise Naruto made. The locksmith was proud at the amount of knowledge Naruto learned and gave him the scrolls that he first wrote and used when he was beginning his livelihood, saying that Naruto was now the only person in the whole continent with the knowledge of locking techniques via seals. When the locksmith died, the ones who came to the burial were only Naruto and the Sandaime. Naruto held back tears as he held the picture of his first sensei and master. Sandaime then gave Naruto a bankbook after the funeral and handed the urn with the locksmith's ashes to him. The ashes, scrolls, and bankbook were now in an altar that Naruto dedicated to his sensei, as well as a few trinkets and things that were precious to him. Thanks to the locking techniques, no more villagers can break into his house and trash it like they owned the place. He then proceeded to kneel at his first sensei's altar and pray. He just told him about his graduation, his coming survival exam, and the new things that Iruka gave him to further his training. Naruto then voiced the question of whether or not to eat breakfast at his sensei's altar. In an eerie display of advice, the unopened cup of rare flavor instant ramen in his sensei's altar dropped to the floor and rolled over to his knee. Naruto looked at the cup ramen and lifted it up. Sensing that this was the answer, Naruto nodded at his sensei's portrait. Saying a prayer of goodbye and promising to visit again tomorrow, he then walked over to where his new backpack and training gear lay. Naruto then systematically took out the training gear and aids. Pulling out several repaired scroll racks of different sizes from a storage box, he then pressed the seals on the somewhat large scroll to separate it into the different scrolls, which he then laid on the scroll racks. The scrolls containing the Kodachi and the Ninja 2 were put in a separate rack. He then picked up a scroll of Taikai, basic knife drills, the knife and tanto fighting style that Naruto practiced with Iruka, and meditation exercises. Naruto then took out the scroll of the Futi no Kiwami and placed it on the special scroll rack, along with the Kodachi and Ninja 2. He then randomly put the other scrolls in the racks, planning to organize them later. He then picked up 2 black bags, which had gravity bands written on one side. Placing one bag in the storage box, he opened the other bag's ziplock. Different weight bands in the color of peach greeted his gaze, along with an instruction manual. All of the bands had a weird script written in their middle. Naruto then shed his clothes and put them on. The different weight bands were of one size, but labeled to be worn in the designated part of the body, which adjusted accordingly to his body's size. The kanji for forehead, middle head, neck, upper shoulders, upper arm, lower arm, wrist, mid-hand, chest, thorax, lower thorax, abdominal, waist, inner thighs, mid-thighs, knees, legs, ankles, and mid-feet were labeled precisely. After Naruto put the weight bands on, a seal formed on his left upper middle wrist. Picking up the instruction manual, he then figured that this was the control seal. A registration process was apparently required for the gravity weight bands. It involved covering the seal with blood, thus activating it. After covering the whole seal with his blood, a voice emanated from the weight bands. An energetic female voice greeted him, full of life and happiness. Naruto grinned as he listened at the voice. "Ohayou gozaimasu. As of right now, the time is 6:25 a.m. Oh. I forgot to introduce myself. Watashi wa Kurosaki Orahem Dezu. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. I thank you for buying the Kurosaki Gravity Weight Band System, version 212,621,131,119 to 14,118,212,015. Now, please do not be annoyed or aggravated by my voice, as you can change it to my husband's voice if you would prefer it. After signing the seal in your own blood, the weight bands are activated and can now be increased individually for specific training regimens, or increased all at once for total body training. You can also access the various options by placing the right index and middle fingers to the seal and closing your eyes. A full menu of options will be presented to your mind in virtual scroll form. That is all the instructions for now. Please enjoy the Kurosaki weight bands and give us some encouraging feedback. Arigatou gozaimashita for choosing the Kurosaki brand of training weights. Naruto smiled as he read the beginnings of the manual. He then formed the monkey seal, and the weights shifted to match his skin color, forming the rat seal, resulted in the gravity band sinking under his skin. Returning to the contents of the backpack, he then pulled out a book called Memoirs of a Shinobi. A deep analysis of what shinobi encounter in their daily lives and missions, by Yumino Iruka. He then pulled out a book about practical tactics and planning, a book about shogi and go, and the Western version of shogi, called chess, and a book of meditation exercises. He then pulled out a dozen utility pouches, which had a special seal that increased the capacity of the pouches to 10 times the normal, 5 pairs of shuriken and kunai holsters, and a large spool of all-purpose ninja steel string, in standard size, thickness, and cutting ability. He then grabbed the tanto, combat knife, and their holsters, which he slung over his shoulder. All of the utility pouches also had a special honing stone and sharpening stone in a small bag, so he can re-sharpen his blades if they turn dull. Spying 2 pouches on the side of the bag, Naruto unzipped one pouch to reveal 12 pairs of gloves with metal plates on the back of the gloves. 5 pairs were in a black color, while the other 5 were in red, blue, white, gray, and brown color. The black gloves had the sigil of Konoha engraved in them, while the colored gloves had Naruto's spiral engraved on them. There were also 2 pairs of chakra-focusing gloves, according to Iruka's note that points them out as special gloves. One pair was engraved with a leaf sigil, while the other pair was engraved with a spiral sigil. Naruto decided to wear the black chakra-focusing gloves with the spiral sigil. He then spied a very small scroll that, when he opened it, produced a shogi, go, and chessboard. Putting them in a table beside the altar, he opened at last the last pouch of the bag. The pouch revealed a long-distance headset communicator and a box containing a music player with an almost complete database of music. It was currently set in the Japanese regional setting, and it can be played with the earbuds and headset that were in the box, or with the headset communicator. Strangely enough, the player and headset communicator were either independently powered with a mysterious inexhaustible energy source or powered with your own chakra. The pouch also yielded a high-powered 20 megapixels long-distance, dual-action, hybrid still and video digital camera, which had a power source just like the audio player and communicator. The pouch also produced a watch case containing an all-weather, all-altitude, all-depths, all-temperature, all-situations, all-proof, and infinitely powered pocket watch, which Naruto readily wore underneath his vest, along with a ceramic titanium chain that came with it. He then decided to take the camera and to try the other devices later. He left the other devices inside a special closet in the room. Naruto then climbed out and resealed his secret room with a lock seal and a specially designed key, which was synchronized to only respond to his chakra. Returning to his room, he then strapped the tanto, combat knife, and their holsters to their respective places. After bandaging the places where he had exposed skin in black bandages and adjusting his hit IA to be a bandana so that it covers his bright hair completely, Naruto proceeded to cook himself a big breakfast, composed of 7 bags of instant ramen and half a carton of milk. After the breakfast, he locked his apartment in the same way that he had locked the secret room. Looking at his pocket watch, he realized he only had 10 minutes left. With an extra burst of speed, he dashed to Training Grounds 9 while adjusting his new chakra focusing gloves. An hour earlier, Iruka arrived on the academy grounds at 6 am in the morning. As he entered the sensei's offices in the academy, the Chunin senseis Isamu and Suzume approached him and proceeded to recount the events during the last hours of the academy yesterday. As he listened to the misfortunes his top 3 students, his inner mind was tickled raw by the latest misfortunes of what class 105 had dubbed the annoying trio. Inner laughter filled his mind, which was filled with nervousness for his most excellent student an hour ago. Laughter, smirks, snorts, and chuckles of amusement were kept in check from his colleagues. He nodded at specific points of their story, and when they hinted that Naruto was behind all the pranks, Iruka glared at them, hard, and with a small growl on his voice, told them that Naruto was with him and the Hokage all day. He told them that Naruto never left their side until well after 11 p.m., while the academy's dismissal period was 5 p.m. Iruka then proceeded to spend 15 minutes of his time lecturing the two about making sure their accusations were truth and not fiction. Iruka then shamed the two by words. Instead of pointing fingers and blaming the usual suspect, they should have paid more attention to the classes. He then added that, even if Naruto wasn't around anymore, it doesn't mean that they can slack off on their work. He then reminded them of their colleague-turned-traitor, Ashiya Mizuki, who was now spending a week with the infamous torture expert and all-around sadist Marino Ibiki in the Anbu incarceration facility, and how spreading false accusations can land them in said same facility if Naruto were to dispute their claims and be found innocent. Iruka then turned around and headed over to his desk, acknowledging Sakura, Ino, and Sasuke's 1-week suspension with a wave of acknowledgement and dismissal. Suzume and Isamu hung their heads in shame as they went back to their desks. Being corrected and scolded by Yumino Iruka wasn't the high point of their day. Also being wrong about their usual suspect was a blow to their ego, shattering their mindsets that teachers were infallible and did not make mistakes. It's funny how some ninjas fall prey to false assumptions, oftentimes ending a career or a life. On a side note, 3 bedridden 11-year-old sneezed loudly and muttered someone's name inaudibly, along with a curse. Naruto. Once again, our favorite blonde pulled up a newly laundered hanky to his nose. Naruto was getting used to these regular bouts of sneezing fits, figuring out that an early graduate was apparently big news to some people. As Naruto looked at his watch, he discerned a pattern on top of the cover. It was a spiral with a repetition of Naruto's full name in his own script. It made his day even brighter and sent a silent prayer to Kami-sama for Iruka's constant guidance and generosity. Determined more than ever to make his Ninja Academy sensei proud, he put more speed in his legs and ran faster to the training grounds. On Training Grounds 9, 3 people were waiting. One was a boy of about 154.1 centimeters in height. He was wearing a white jacket with a thick and high collar that covered his neck and a part of his chin. He wore traditional shinobi pants that reached just above his knees, along with the standard shinobi sandals. His right leg, arms, and hands were bandaged. The boy, called Hyuga Niji, had pupil-less eyes of the blood limit called Byakugan, which all Hyuga acquired from birth. Unbeknownst to the other two in the clearing, a curse seal lies covered amidst the bandages, pilot cap, and the hit I-8 on his forehead. He was currently meditating as he waited for his other teammate and sensei to arrive. The other boy was about 155.1 centimeters in height. He was wearing a white undershirt with long and loose sleeves, along with a forest green Chinese-style, long-sleeved jacket with light green trim, which was opened fully and seemed to conform to his undershirt. He was also wearing matching pants of the same style and color. He wore his hit I-8 the traditional way on his forehead. He seems to be fidgeting every few minutes, looking in every direction, as if anticipating someone to appear through the trees or the entrance of the clearing. Rock Lee was waiting for his newfound friend in spirits, Naruto. He was also waiting for the arrival of his sensei, Mido Guy, to prove that he can be a ninja without using ninjutsu and jinjutsu. The lone girl of the group was fingering her kunai and shuriken holsters with anticipation, opening and closing the clasp holding her weapons, as well as fiddling with the scrolls hidden in her utility pouch. She was about 152.3 centimeters in height, her brown hair done in the traditional Chinese style, termed as a dango, which was made up of 2 small buns. She was wearing the traditional shinobi pants, which ended just above her ankles. She also was wearing a Chinese-style sleeveless top in peach plum colors. Hiramai Tenten was getting more and more antsy with every minute that passed by and hoped that his sensei and his other teammate would arrive already so that they can pass this test and finally do missions as Genins of the Leaf. The three then heard the soft footfalls of someone and turned in unison to the direction of the sounds. They then saw a boy, clad in all black gear, with the exception of the royal blue cloth on his head. He was wearing his hit I-8 like a bandana, covering the color of his hair. The boy wore a black muscle shirt, pants, and vest. 2 pairs of kunai and shuriken holsters were strapped to his left and right outer thighs. Strapped on his right outer thigh, in front of the kunai holster, was a well-designed tanto. And on the back of the boy's upper waist was a combat knife, strapped onto a separate belt, as the belt on the pants held 2 utility pouches. Black bandages completed the ensemble, making Naruto look more like a fearsome opponent instead of the goofball that he normally was. He waved to his fellow graduates as he approached them. "Oh hey Lee, Tenten-san, Niji-san, Anu, I'm not late for the exam, right?" Naruto greeted them as he stopped in front of Lee, who greeted him energetically. Tenten just waved at him, while Niji just grunted. "Oh hey Ugazamasu Naruto-kun. You're just in time for our exam, Guy Sensei is still not here at the moment." Naruto opened his vest and took out his new watch, hidden in a secret pocket on the underside of the vest. He then breathed in relief as he read the time on the watch, which also had a digital display. It was just 6:55 in the morning. Closing his watch and putting it back in his vest pocket, he then decided to discuss the exam that they were going to take. "So do we have any idea what Guy Sensei's exam will be?" Lee decided to answer his question, as he has had more contact with Guy than any of his teammates. "I believe Guy Sensei will make us undergo an exam to test our initial abilities, although he is a Taijutsu specialist. He will also allow us to use ninjutsu and jinjutsu, as he can also use them in battle." Lee nodded to himself as he thought of Guy's attitude and what his habits were when they met inside and outside of the academy several times. The 3 other genin hopefuls nodded their heads and contemplated their strategies and moves for the upcoming exam. Team 9's musings, especially Lee's, were broken by a voice that boomed throughout the clearing. "How clever, Lee. You actually remember Guy Sensei's teachings, even though he hasn't visited you for a year and a half until you met him again. You are truly a person worthy to be a disciple of his."